Chapter 775. East Sea Galaxy, East Sea Planet, Godly Void Pavilion. In a forbidden area on East Ocean, a white-haired immortal emperor with an illusory body suddenly opened his eyes and said in shock, "Sin Luo actually escaped from the heavenly prison. What stupid thing does he want to do this time?" This white-haired immortal emperor was one of the divine Void twin emperors. Void Great Emperor. In a palace on planet East Sea, a golden-armored immortal emperor bathed in golden divine light suddenly opened his eyes. Killing intent flashed across them. "It's Senro again. Humph. I won't let you live this time." This golden armor immortal emperor was the other one of the two emperors, Great Emperor Shinkong. The moment that Sun Luo Immortal King used his supernatural powers, the divine Void Emperor who had placed spells on Senluo's body immediately sensed his aura. Without any hesitation, the two of them left their respective forbidden grounds and temporary residences. They glanced at each other, and without saying a word, they rushed towards the Quicksand Star region with all their might. However, the two of them were in completely different moods. The Void Emperor's hair was white, and his expression was complicated. There was a bit of guilt on his face. The Shinkong Emperor's divine light shone brightly, and killing intent surged. There was even a bit of resentment on his face. When the two emperors appeared, their aura shocked the entire Imperial Star Field and countless godly Void Pavilion cultivators. Countless cultivators were guessing what had happened to cause the two emperors to leave the Eastern Sea Galaxy together. On the heaven stairway outside the tomb of the God of Sin, a blind old man dressed as a low-ranked disciple was sweeping the fallen leaves on the ground with his eyes closed. Those who would clean this heaven stairway were mostly godly Void Pavilion Jindan and nascent soul cultivators. The old man seemed to be only at the early nascent soul stage. The moment the two emperors left the Eastern Sea star system, the old man let out a long sigh, and his face grew even older. "What an idiot! Luo Heir, why do you have to do this? The heaven-suppressing bell isn't something you can destroy." The nascent soul realm disciples next to the old man said with concern after hearing the old man's sigh. "Senior brother Xiang, why are you sighing? Could it be that something happened at home?" The old man, called senior apprentice brother Xiang, had always been quite popular among the low-level disciples of the godly Void Pavilion. Seeing him sigh, many disciples expressed their concern. "Yes. The junior in the family has stirred up some trouble again. I'm afraid that child's life will be in danger this time." Old man Xiang sighed and answered. His already blind eyes gradually flowed with turbid tears. This time, that silly disciple was determined to use his life to destroy the heaven-suppressing bell. Sun Luomeng was determined to die and no one could stop him. "Sigh, senior brother Xiang, be more open-minded. Life and death are decreed by fate. You can't force it." Some low-level cultivators consoled him. "That's right. Life and death are decreed by fate and cannot be forced." However, that silly child refused to let go. He would rather die than realize it. Alas, alas. The dark and damp cave was filled with the smell of blood. Ningfan's body was severely injured. His limbs and bones felt like they were about to break apart. The pain was indescribable. He fell to the ground, holding the unconscious little demon girl in his arms, who was completely unharmed. Not far away from him, the ancient fiend puppet was severely damaged. It was unknown how it could be repaired. The moment they were sucked into the black hole, Ningfan decisively summoned the ancient devil puppet and ordered it to protect him and the little demoness. The strangling power of the black hole was extremely powerful. Even the ancient devil puppet would find it hard to withstand that level of strangling power. The ancient devil puppet was severely damaged. In the end, Ningfan was also injured by the aftershock of the strangling power. No matter how severe his injuries were, Ningfan did not let the little demoness suffer any harm. After consuming a healing pill, Ningfan activated the Black Star Art to heal himself and struggled to sit up from the ground. He let the little demoness rest her head on his thighs. Ningfan looked around and saw corpses everywhere. There were human corpses and demonic beasts' corpses. Blood was everywhere. The terrain of the cave was slanted. The blood on the ground flowed from high to low, towards the depths of the cave. From time to time, the miserable screams of cultivators' primordial spirits could be heard from the depths of the cave. In that direction, There was a strong and powerful heartbeat that would beat from time to time. No, the heartbeat didn't come from that direction. It came from the entire cave. Every time the heartbeat was heard, the cave would slightly tremble, like a heartbeat. It was as if the entire cave was a beating heart. Every time the cave beat, it would resonate with Ning Fan's divine heart. Without a doubt, this cave was not only a giant heart, but also the heart of an ancient god. The heartbeat of the ancient god that I heard before, did it come from this cave? Ning Fan frowned as he looked at the cave. After a long time, he came to a conclusion. The cave itself was a giant heart that had been petrified. The so-called heartbeat of the ancient god was indeed coming from the entire cave. Gradually, Ning Fan felt that this cave was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. As his thoughts raced, he suddenly thought of something and guessed where this cave was. If I'm not wrong, this is the Cave of Time of the ancient god. The Cave of Time itself is a petrified heart that was left behind by an ancient god. However, I was clearly sucked away by the black hole. Why would I appear in this cave? I can't be wrong. This place is most likely the Cave of Time of the ancient god. Lu Xian had found this cave before. She had seen some of the scenery from the outside, and it was exactly the same as what Ning Fan was seeing now. The Cave of Time of the ancient god, the heartbeat of the ancient god, the quicksand demons, the Star River burial technique, the red-haired immortal king, Mutu, the golden-armored heavenly god. Ning Fan let out a long sigh. He knew that he had fallen into a huge conspiracy, and the mastermind of that conspiracy was most likely that red-haired immortal king, who possessed incredible abilities. Humph! You woke up so quickly? Your life is pretty tough. Even though I didn't use the full power of the Star River burial technique, it is enough to kill an ordinary void abandonment technique. I didn't expect you to have a void abandonment puppet with you. Besides, you're willing to abandon the puppet to protect yourself before you die. You're really a decisive person. As if sensing that Ning Fan had woken up, a cold voice suddenly came from the depths of the cave. It was the voice of the red-haired immortal king. Before his voice faded away, Ning Fan saw a flash of red light in front of his eyes. The red-haired immortal king instantly appeared in front of him. The killing intent of the red-haired immortal king was completely locked onto him. That strong sense of oppression almost suffocated Ning Fan. The corner of the red-haired immortal king's mouth curved into a cold and wild smile and said, "I'll give you two choices. You only have 3 breaths to consider which one you want to choose. The first choice is that you help me complete a great task. I'll spare your life and give you some benefits for the sake of your help. The second choice is that if you refuse to help me, I'll kill you immediately. After you die, the woman in your arms will also die with you." The moment the red-haired immortal king uttered those threatening words, Ning Fan's expression did not change, but his heart sank. The red-haired immortal king was a powerful immortal king while he was just a weak, profound ghost realm cultivator. However, it did not mean that he had no power to resist the red-haired immortal king. Ning Fan secretly activated the Yin Yang locket and took out the second jade slip of Shadi from the profound Yin world and hid it in his sleeve. This jade slip could open the heavenly gate and summon the 16 eternal ancient realm spiritual puppets of Shadi to help him in battle. Even though the red-haired immortal king was strong, if Ning Fan summons the 16 immortal venerables and immortal king puppets, the red-haired immortal king would definitely be in trouble. The moment Ning Fan took out the jade slip, the expression of the red-haired immortal king changed slightly and revealed a look of surprise. At this moment, he actually sensed a sense of danger from Ning Fan, who was just a profound ghost realm junior. The red-haired immortal king did not know what the jade slip in Ning Fan's hand was, but he could vaguely sense a sense of danger from it. This made him very surprised. He could not understand how Ning Fan, who was just an early ghost realm cultivator, could have so many heaven-defying means. The void-abandoning puppet and the jade slip that could make him, a dignified fifth tribulation immortal king, feel danger. He had a wild and arrogant personality. He was never afraid of any danger. If it was in the past, he would certainly not be afraid of Ning Fan. Even an immortal emperor would not be able to make him bow down. However, at this moment, he still had important matters to attend to. He did not want to fight with Ning Fan and waste his time. Moreover, He had already seen through Ning Fan's identity as a one-aperture ancient god. Thus, he wanted to use Ning Fan's strength to do something. Therefore, he did not want to completely fall out with Ning Fan. Seeing that Ning Fan had already decided to break the jade slip, and a great battle was about to begin, the red-haired immortal king's eyes darkened. He said again, "My strength is far beyond your expectations. Although I am just a fifth tribulation immortal king, there is no sixth tribulation immortal emperor in the four heavens who can defeat me. Your jade slip might not be able to kill me, but it will kill the woman in your arms. Her void poison has already taken effect. Only I can save her. If you attack me, she will die for sure." Void poison? What do you mean? Ning Fan, who was about to break the jade slip, stopped abruptly when he heard the hidden meaning in the red-haired immortal king's words. He asked with a cold face. He quietly released his five-colored medicine soul and entered the little demoness's body. After sensing it, Ning Fan's face became as cold as iron. He did not notice it before. Now he discovered that the little demoness's limbs and bones were filled with an invisible poison. The poison's toxicity was not strong. At most, it could only kill the void-abandoning puppet. However, because it was illusory and had no substance, even an immortal emperor might not be able to remove it. The poison was madly devouring the vitality of the little demoness. Judging from the speed of devouring, the little demoness' vitality would be completely devoured by the poison in less than 3 days and she would die. "Are you the one who planted this poison?" Ning Fan's eyes were burning with anger. He stared at the red-haired immortal king without any fear. "Humph! Who do you think I am? Why would I need to poison a junior? This poison is called the void poison." The reason why this girl was poisoned was because she had consumed the void fruit for a long time. It was a strange fruit that contained poison. However, it could enhance the cultivation method of the void scripture. It was most likely because the people of the godly void pavilion had forced this girl to consume the void fruit for a long time, causing her to accumulate so much poison. The Star River burial technique that I displayed previously contained the void ability. It just happened to trigger the poison in her body. The poison acting up at this time and place was purely coincidental. However, even if it didn't act up this time, the poison would definitely act up within a few thousand years. However, I am very doubtful if she could live for more than a few thousand years as a sacrifice. What is the sacrifice? She is the dignified young master of the godly void pavilion. Why would the godly void pavilion force her to consume a poisonous thing? Ning Fan's eyes changed and asked, "You don't know that she is the sacrifice?" The red-haired immortal king sneered. "I don't know. May I ask Senior what the sacrifice is?" Ning Fan wanted to ask again, but the red-haired immortal king showed an impatient look. 3 breaths have already passed. What is your choice? Choice? Ning Fan's eyes fell on the gradually paling face of little demoness and sighed softly. Although he didn't know how much of the red-haired immortal king's words were true and how much was false, he could see that little demoness' life was in danger. The poison that she was afflicted with was really powerful. If no one helped her detoxify the poison, she would die within 3 days. Ning Fan might not be afraid of the red-haired immortal king with the jade slip of the Slayer Emperor, but he was afraid that little demoness would die from the poison. He didn't dare to bet on the authenticity of the red-haired immortal king's words. He could only pray that the red-haired immortal king really had a way to help little demoness detoxify the poison. "All right. Junior promises Senior that I will help Senior. However, after this is done, Junior will not ask for any benefits. I only ask Senior to save her and detoxify her." Ning Fan's eyes flashed with determination and said, "The current you doesn't have the qualifications to raise any conditions to me. You must first prove your identity as a one-aperture ancient god. If you can't prove it, humph." As he said this, the red-haired immortal king's killing intent surged like the sea, drowning Ning Fan. It was as if as long as Ning Fan couldn't prove his identity as an ancient god, he would take action forcefully and kill Ning Fan. He wasn't afraid even if Ning Fan had the jade slip of the Slayer Emperor. Ning Fan's eyes froze when he felt the killing intent of the red-haired immortal king. He had a deeper understanding of this person. This Enluo immortal king is indeed a madman. He knows that I have a jade slip that can threaten his life, but he still dared to show his killing intent to me. His eyes fell on little Demoness' pale face. Ning Fan sighed and activated the power of his ancient god bloodline, causing his ancient god heart to make a strong heartbeat. The heartbeat wasn't as strong as the heartbeat of the ancient gods in Quicksand Starfield, but it was still the heartbeat of an ancient god. After confirming Ning Fan's identity as an ancient god, the red-haired immortal king's expression became less cold, and he nodded with satisfaction. Suddenly, he raised his hand and pointed a finger at the little demon girl. A crimson ray immediately entered the little demon girl's body, and her complexion slowly turned better. My finger light can help this girl suppress the poison for a month. With my cultivation base of the void scripture, I can help her detoxify the poison in an instant. However, I won't do it now. You should understand the reason. Junior understands. Junior will do his best to help Senior. I hope that Senior will not forget your promise to help her detoxify the poison after everything is done. If Senior were to go back on today's promise, then Junior will risk everything to make Senior regret it. Ning Fan looked at little Demoness, whose complexion was slightly rosy, and felt slightly relieved. He then temporarily kept her in the Yuan Yao world to recuperate. Then he stood up and hid the jade slip in his sleeve. He cupped his fists at the red-haired immortal king and threatened him coldly. He didn't care what the red-haired immortal king wanted to do. All he wanted was to detoxify the poison in little Demoness' body. He understood that the red-haired immortal king would never detoxify the poison in little Demoness' body before everything was done. The red-haired immortal king didn't trust Ning Fan. That was why he threatened Ning Fan with the poison in little Demoness' body. With red-haired immortal king's eyesight, he could tell that the poison in little Demoness' body had a stronger effect on Ning Fan than the mental seal. The red-haired immortal king frowned at Ning Fan's threat. He was obviously displeased, but he didn't say anything. Given his character, he would never tolerate anyone's threat. But now that the important matter was more urgent, he wouldn't care about these minor details. May I know what help Senior needs from me? Although I'm a one-aperture ancient god, my cultivation base is still low. I'm afraid I can't help Senior too much. Ning Fan asked. I need you to be the vessel of my ancient god power. I already have a vessel, but it's just a half-aperture ancient god. It's too weak. You're stronger than him. The process of being the vessel will be dangerous, but the opportunity isn't small either. To you, it's the best time to open your divine aperture. Before the red-haired immortal king could finish his words, a fearful and angry voice suddenly came from the depths of the cave, interrupting his words. That voice was made by Xuekongzi. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly when he heard Xuekongzi's angry voice. He initially thought that Xuekongzi was dead like the others. He didn't expect that Xuekongzi was still alive. Although Xuekongzi was still alive, his voice was getting weaker and weaker. The life force in his body seemed to be draining rapidly. It was as if someone was sucking away his life force bit by bit. Needless to say, the person who sucked away Xuekongzi's life force was most likely the red-haired immortal king, or his subordinates. Ning Fan sighed and said, remembering the friendship he had with Xuekongzi. This person and I are old friends. Can you spare his life? Chapter 776. This person is an old friend of mine. Can you spare his life? Ning Fan sighed and asked. Even though his friendship with Xuekongzi was shallow, the latter had helped him before. He could not just watch him die without doing anything. Sun Luo frowned. He did not like Ning Fan's request to him again and again. However, when he thought that he still needed Ning Fan's help to fulfill his wish, he nodded and agreed to Ning Fan's request. With a cold expression, he transmitted his voice to the depths of the cave and gave some instructions. Very soon, Xuekongzi's cursing voice gradually stopped. I'll make an exception this time and agree to your request. However, there won't be a next time. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Luo clenched his 5 fingers. The spatial power in his hand flowed and suddenly, a bloody primordial spirit appeared out of nowhere. It was Xuekongzi's primordial spirit. In fact, the physical bodies of the cultivators and demon lords who were sucked into the black hole would be destroyed immediately. Their primordial spirits and demon souls would be sucked into the depths of the cave as nourishment for the resurrection of the ancient god's heart. The primordial spirits of Elder Luo and the other divine void realm experts had already perished, while the demon souls of Qi Lian and the other demon lords had also perished. If Ning Fan's request was a little slower, Xue Kongzi's primordial spirit would also perish. Ning Fan was weak. It was already a miracle that he could save Xue Kongzi's life. It was impossible for him to save the others. Sun Luo casually tossed Xue Kongzi's primordial spirit to Ning Fan and said coldly, "Follow me." Ning Fan caught Xue Kongzi's primordial spirit and sighed softly. Even though Xue Kongzi was not dead, his injuries were extremely severe. Even if he had the chance to rebuild his physical body, his cultivation base would probably be greatly damaged. Ning Fan took out a tuft of 1,000,000 years old spiritual herb, which had the effect of healing primordial spirit injuries. He circulated his magic power and instantly refined the spiritual herb into a medicinal liquid and sprinkled it on Xue Kongzi's primordial spirit. Then he used the Black Star technique to temporarily seal Xue Kongzi's primordial spirit, suppressing all of his injuries and temporarily putting him into a state of unconsciousness. Then he put him into his soul pouch. At this moment, Ning Fan still had important matters to attend to. After completing the agreement with Sun Luo and leaving this place, he would undo the seal on Xue Kongzi and wake him up. Xue Kongzi had helped him once, and he had saved Xue Kongzi twice. The favor from back then had long been repaid, and he did not owe Xue Kongzi anything. After keeping the severely damaged ancient devil puppet, Ning Fan stepped on the flowing blood on the ground and followed behind Sun Luo, walking towards the depths of the stone cave. His spiritual sense penetrated the walls of the cave and extended outwards. Gradually, his eyes revealed a slightly shocked expression. This was the ancient god's cave of time, located in the Quicksand Star Ocean. But now, the entire Quicksand Star Ocean had been swallowed by a black hole. Previously, the black hole had spread out from the direction of Quicksand Star Sea. First, it swallowed Quicksand Star Sea, and in an instant, it swept through the entire Quicksand Star domain, swallowing all the humans and monsters in the battle, and all the living beings in Quicksand Star domain. Outside the cave was an endless black hole that was rotating counterclockwise. There were countless cultivation planet fragments floating inside the black hole. This black hole was one of the natal worlds that Sun Luo Immortal King cultivated. It was very similar to Ning Fan's natal small Kiliacosm, the Void Whirlpool realm. Both of them were worlds used to display spatial abilities. The difference was that the level of this world was much higher than the Void Whirlpool realm. Moreover, the power of the Star River Burial technique, which was performed using this black hole as a medium, was also far beyond that of the Void Whirlpool technique. Ning Fan had successfully cultivated the Void Whirlpool technique, but he could only be considered as having just learned the basics of spatial abilities. Sun Luo Immortal King's attainments in spatial abilities were the best in the entire Eastern Heaven. Ning Fan was no match for him. The entire Quicksand Star Ocean was floating in the black hole world. It was a sea of golden starlight. There were many broken immortal mountains floating on the surface of the sea. They used to be the nests of demons. The poisonous mist had long dissipated in the black hole world. Under the sea of stars, there was a thick layer of reefs. The ancient god's cave of time was hidden in a secret place on the reefs. There was originally a high-grade illusory formation outside the cave. Even true immortals might not be able to discover the existence of this cave. In the past, it was purely by chance that Lu Xian discovered the existence of this cave. The Sea of Stars was boundless. There was more than one ancient god's cave of time at the bottom of the sea. Including the cave that Ning Fan was currently in, there were 5 other such caves. There was a total of 6 caves in the Sea of Stars. However, only this cave had the densest time power. Hence, it could be called the Cave of Time. There seemed to be some kind of connection between the 6 caves. Every time an ancient heartbeat sounded, the 6 caves would tremble at the same time. The entire reefs and the entire Sea of Stars were trembling. Could it be? Ning Fan scanned the locations of the 6 caves with his spirit sense and suddenly had a guess. He could not help but take a deep breath. At this moment, he seemed to have understood something and retracted his spirit sense. You can tell. The entire Quicksand Star Ocean is transformed by the 6 orifices divine heart of the flowing sand primogenitor. This person is proficient in the technique of time. He has preserved his divine heart by weathering it. Thus, his divinity is not damaged and his heart power is inexhaustible. The 6 caves that you see are all the heart apertures that this person has opened. The flowing sand primogenitor is a 6 orifices ancient god. When he was alive, he could seal the flow of time in the entire quicksand star region with just a finger. Despite being an immortal king, he was able to erase the Tao attainments of an immortal emperor, making the immortal emperor fearful. Seeing that Ningfan had seen through the clues of the quicksand star ocean, Sun Luo explained. His eyes were filled with fiery red light. What he wanted was the flowing sand primogenitor's unparalleled power of time. Time was time and the world plane was emptiness. If he could control both the power of time and space at the same time, he would have a chance to destroy the heaven-suppressing bell. Ningfan's eyes turned solemn. Sun Luo's words confirmed his guess. The entire quicksand star ocean was transformed by the ancient god's heart. The so-called Cave of Time was just a divine aperture that the flowing sand primogenitor had opened on his heart. The Cave of Time had 3 levels in total. In the first level, there was a sea of blood. The blood of all living beings in the entire quicksand star region was in this place. Countless primordial spirits, medicine souls, demon cores, magic treasures and storage pouches were floating in the sea of blood. All of them were being devoured by the sea of blood bit by bit. Mutu was setting up a formation above the sea of blood. The grade of the grand formation that he set up was so high that Ningfan could not see through it. Other than Ningfan, the little demoness and Shuekongzi, all the members of the Quicksand tribe, the cultivators of the Alliance and the Demon Tide Army were all dead. Sun Luo was a ruthless person. If it wasn't because Ningfan was useful to him, he would not spare Shuekongzi, let alone Ningfan and the little demoness. He would kill all the enemies in front of him without showing any mercy. As soon as he saw Sun Luo, Mutu's expression immediately changed. He hurriedly went forward to greet him. When he saw that Ningfan still had some treasures, Mutu was slightly surprised. However, when he saw Ningfan following closely behind Sun Luo, he tactfully did not ask any questions. "Greetings, Master. How long will it take for you to finish setting up the heart offering formation?" Sun Luo's eyes flashed with cold light. He stared at Mutu coldly as if he would kill Mutu without any hesitation if the formation took longer than he expected. As soon as he saw Sun Luo's gaze, Mutu was greatly shocked. 2 hours. In another 2 hours, I will certainly finish setting up the grand formation. Very good. Quickly set up the formation. As if he was very satisfied with Mutu's answer, Sun Luo did not say anything else. He brought Ningfan along and continued flying towards the 2nd level of the Cave of Time. Seeing that Sun Luo did not punish him, Mutu heaved a long sigh of relief. His expression was as terrified as one could imagine. It was no longer as solemn and dignified as when he was in the Quicksand clan. Ningfan's gaze swept past Mutu and then looked at Sun Luo. His brows were slightly knitted together. In his senses, Mutu was Sun Luo. However, there were some similarities between them. "He's my 2nd primordial spirit." Sun Luo only gave a brief explanation and kept his mouth shut. Ningfan's expression froze. He was surprised once again. It was hard to imagine that Mutu, who was Sun Luo's 2nd primordial spirit, would be afraid of Sun Luo like a tiger. One could imagine just how heartless and cold-blooded Sun Luo was. He did not even have any feelings for the 2nd primordial spirit that he had cultivated. This person was ruthless to others, but he was even more ruthless to himself. The 2nd level of the Cave of Time was a boundless golden lake. The lake was filled with extremely dense time power. Hundreds of golden lotuses were growing on it. The moment Ningfan saw the lotuses, his eyes widened in shock. Ancient God Heart Lotus. He had seen this item before in an ancient book. He did not know where this item grew. Currently, it no longer existed in the 4 heavens and 9 worlds. The only thing he knew was that this item had an indefinite appearance, and the name of the ancient god Heart Lotus. Besides that, it also had the effect of greatly increasing a cultivator's magic power. The only way to identify this lotus was to observe the unique Tao marks on it. There was a strict requirement for plucking this lotus. It was said that only those who were proficient in the three flowers converged prominence technique of the ancient gods could pluck this lotus. If the first flower was also cultivated to the grand perfection stage, the cultivator would not be qualified to pluck this lotus. Once the cultivator touches this lotus, the lotus would definitely wither. There were hundreds of ancient god heart lotuses in this place. Among them, more than 10 of them had already withered, as if they had been plucked by someone, according to Ning Fan's estimation. If he could devour all of the ancient god heart lotuses in this place, his magic power would receive an extremely terrifying increase. You want this lotus again? Sun Luo frowned. He looked displeased. He really did not like people who did not know when to stop or when to back off. Seeing Sun Luo's displeasure, Ning Fan sighed slightly and shook his head. Even though this lotus is good, it is not something that I must obtain. I will not ask for things that I shouldn't. Ning Fan did not know whether Sun Luo cared about these ancient god heart lotuses or not. He did not want to anger Sun Luo for some inanimate objects and delay the little demonist's detoxification. Seeing that Ning Fan was very sensible, Sun Luo's expression softened and he sneered. This lotus is useless to me, but it is quite useful to you. It can greatly increase your magic power. Unfortunately, you can't take this lotus away. If it isn't a cultivator who has cultivated the first flower to the grand perfection stage of the three flowers converged prominence, don't even think about taking this lotus away. Touching it will cause the lotus to wither, swallowing it will cause a backlash. I don't want to cultivate the boring three flowers converged prominence technique, and I have no interest in this lotus. Mu-Tu and the three gods have not cultivated the first flower to the grand perfection stage of the three flowers converged prominence. Those withered lotuses were caused by them carelessly touching it. I want this lotus but I can't take it. The weak can't get what they want. In other words, these ancient god heart lotuses are useless to Senior? If I can take them away, will Senior have any objections? Ning Fan's eyes flashed and asked. If you can take them away, it will be considered as your fortune. Anyway, you don't have to ask me to help you. With my cultivation base, even if I don't cultivate the three flowers technique, I can still pluck this lotus forcefully. However, I don't want to help you. I don't need Senior's help. As long as Senior doesn't blame me for taking the lotus, it's fine. Ancient God Tao, three flowers converged prominence. Human lotus appear. As soon as he finished speaking, Ning Fan's expression turned serious. He suddenly stomped on the ground and a lead-colored lotus bloomed on the ground. Suddenly, it turned into millions of lead-colored lotus shadows that circled around his body. Then Ning Fan turned into a few shadows and flew towards the surface of the golden lake. He moved at lightning speed and plucked all the ancient god heart lotuses. A total of 466 ancient god heart lotuses belonged to him. The grand perfection stage of the first flower? It's impossible to cultivate the grand perfection stage of the first flower without billions of Tao crystals. You are just an early ghost profound realm cultivator, but you actually managed to cultivate this technique to the grand perfection stage of the first flower. It's really rare. Sun Luo's expression was still cold, but he gave a rare compliment. His temperament was cold and indifferent. He would never praise others. However, it was rare for him to praise Ning Fan. It was really because the three-flower technique burned too much money. Even a large power like the Godly Void Pavilion would not be rich enough to burn money to cultivate this kind of abnormal ability. Cultivating the first flower required more than 1 trillion Tao crystals. Cultivating the second flower required at least 100 trillion Tao crystals. No one knew how much it would cost or how many rare spiritual herbs it would take to cultivate the third flower. The first flower was complete, and no one below the true immortal Khanate would be defeated. The second flower was complete, and he was invincible throughout the ages. The consummation of the third flower would allow him to be invincible in the second step realm. As for the specific effect, no one had ever tried it. For a force like the Godly Void Pavilion, there was no way they could come up with enough resources and money to produce a cultivator at the peak of the three-flower realm. If one was only at the peak of the two-flower realm or the one-flower realm, then it would be meaningless to cultivate this technique. It would not be of any use in battles over the ages. After keeping all of the heart lotuses, Ningfan made a leap and returned to the lakeside. He cupped his fist slightly at Sun Luo as a form of gratitude for his previous compliments. He shifted his gaze to the side and looked at the golden lake. A thought flashed through his mind. This golden lake was extremely special. It was like a cultivator's dantian, able to store and recover magic power. This is the heart origin that can only be developed by a 3 apertures ancient god. Once the heart origin is developed, the ancient god's magic power can be doubled. At the same time, the recovery speed of the magic power of the heart origin is heaven-defying. Sun Luo remained silent for a moment. No one knew what he was thinking about. All of a sudden, his blood-red eyes flashed. He raised his hand and pointed a finger at Ningfan. Ningfan was listening attentively to Sun Luo's explanation. When he saw Sun Luo's attack, all of a sudden, his eyes turned cold and he hurriedly retreated. At the same time, he wanted to crush the jade slip in his sleeve to counterattack. However, he immediately sensed that Sun Luo's finger didn't have any killing intent. Instead, it contained strands of blood-colored starlight. Sun Luo was trying to heal him with the star technique. As his thoughts raced, Ningfan no longer retreated nor did he resist. Instead, he allowed the scarlet light to enter his body. The moment the finger light entered Ningfan's body, a tearing pain immediately swept through his entire body. However, despite the pain, his internal injuries were recovering at an astonishing speed. As the blood-colored starlight enveloped his body, Ningfan seemed to have turned into a bloody man. 10 breaths later, all the injuries left by the Star River burial technique were healed. He exhaled a mouthful of turbid qi. His limbs and bones were filled with inexhaustible strength. The blood-red starlight not only healed Ningfan's injuries, but also improved the strength of his physical body by a tiny bit. Thank you, Senior, for helping me heal my injuries. Ningfan cupped his fists to express his gratitude. However, his expression became more vigilant. He did not believe that Sun Luo would be so kind as to spend so much effort to heal his injuries. With Sun Luo's cold and detached personality, he would not do meaningless things. You should know that I won't help you without a purpose. I have already helped you heal your injuries. Besides, I can also help you refine all the ancient god heart lotuses within 2 hours. If you don't have my help, you will need to spend a lot of time to refine these heart lotuses. Moreover, with your current cultivation base, you won't be able to completely absorb the medicinal power of these heart lotuses. Since I have helped you once, you also need to help me once more. This isn't a discussion but an order. You don't have a choice. Sun Luo's aura was extremely stern. He did not allow Ningfan to reject his request. Ningfan frowned. Even though he did not know how he could help to become Sun Luo's ancient god vessel, he knew that it would be very dangerous. If it wasn't for the little demoness, Ningfan would definitely not agree to Sun Luo's request. Today, Sun Luo actually made another request to Ningfan. Frankly speaking, Ningfan did not want to agree at all. However, given the current situation, he seemed to have no other choice. He could either agree or fall out with Sun Luo. Once they fall out, Ningfan had the confidence to protect himself, but he did not have the confidence to cure the void poison of the little demoness. Senior, why don't you tell me what you need my help with? Ningfan said after pondering for a moment. Sun Luo's expression became frighteningly cold when he saw Ningfan dared to refuse his request. After a long while, he asked in a displeased tone. Junior, do you know what fireworks are? Fireworks. Ningfan was stunned. He was preparing himself to deal with Sun Luo's provocation. Unexpectedly, the moment Sun Luo opened his mouth, he actually asked a question that was completely unrelated to the current situation. You don't know. Sun Luo's killing intent suddenly gushed out like a tidal wave, as if he would kill Ningfan if he said that he did not know. I know. Fireworks are a kind of item made by mortals. Once it is set off, it will be very beautiful. Mortals often set off fireworks during festivals and festivals. If there is a celebration, they will also set off fireworks. Ningfan did not understand what Sun Luo meant, but he still answered him. So it's an item made by mortals. No wonder I didn't get any of these things when I massacred the cultivation clans of 107 star regions in the past. Sun Luo sighed in a serious manner. He was born as a cultivator. He was arrogant and looked down on mortals, heavenly geniuses who were at the same level as him, the famous seniors and all dogmas and rules. Why would he care about what fireworks were? Hearing Sun Luo's words, Ningfan's expression changed. He thought that Sun Luo wouldn't be crazy enough to massacre the cultivation clans of 107-star regions just to find a firework, right? She once said that she likes fireworks, especially those with lotus patterns. She said that she likes those ordinary things. Only by being ordinary can one be beautiful forever. Sun Luo's eyes were filled with reminiscence. After a long time, he regained his senses and said to Ningfan sternly, "Since you know what fireworks are, I'll give you a task. After you become my ancient god's vessel, I'll arrange a safe place for you and give you enough time to make things like fireworks." Fireworks with lotus patterns. A celebration? My return to the Divine Void Realm is indeed a celebration for the cultivators of the Divine Void Realm. So, I will need a large number of fireworks to liven things up. Sun Luo did not want to talk nonsense with Ningfan anymore. His expression turned cold and he ordered Ningfan, "Sit down with your legs crossed and consume the ancient god heart lotus. I will help you quickly make this lotus flower. Remember to cooperate with me and don't waste my time." Ningfan sat on the ground with his legs crossed and consumed an ancient god heart lotus. While maintaining full vigilance, he quickly refined the ancient god heart lotus with the help of Sun Luo Immortal King. Ningfan still found it hard to believe Sun Luo's request. The second favor Sun Luo wanted him to do was to make fireworks. Ningfan had entered the Tao from the mortal world. Naturally, he knew what fireworks were. With his abilities, making fireworks was a piece of cake. However, he did not understand why a cold-blooded and heartless person like Sun Luo wanted a large number of fireworks with lotus patterns. As for the specific reason, he would not ask Sun Luo about it. Anyway, this favor was very simple. Ningfan did not mind doing Sun Luo a favor in exchange for his help in refining the ancient god heart lotus. If Ningfan refined the heart lotus with his current ghost profound realm cultivation base, he would waste at least 70% of the medicinal power, not to mention how much time he would have to spend. Having Sun Luo's help was naturally great. 2 hours passed slowly. With Sun Luo's help, Ningfan had refined all 466 ancient god heart lotuses. His cultivation base had risen to the peak of early ghost profound realm. He only needed a short period of seclusion, and he would be able to break through to mid-ghost profound realm. Chapter 777. At this moment, Ningfan only needed to go into seclusion once to completely break through the bottleneck of the mid-ghost profound realm. His magic power was comparable to that of a cultivator at the peak of ghost mystic realm. After devouring 466 ancient god heart lotuses, the biggest benefit Ningfan obtained was not the increase of his illegal power, but the possibility of the initial opening of his second heart acupoint. At this moment, an extremely small golden light spot appeared next to the first divine aperture in his heart. The location of the golden dot was the location of the second divine aperture. At this moment, Ningfan's understanding of the ancient god's heart had increased by another level. As long as he cultivated enough ancient god divine heart power, he would be able to circulate the divine heart power from the first divine aperture and attack the spot where the light spot was located. Step by step, he would be able to open the second divine aperture. Once the second divine orifice was opened, the effect of devouring heavenly ingredients and earthly treasures to increase his magical power would double. Consuming a Tao fruit or pill would give one 4 times the benefits of an ordinary person. If I have the complete ancient god heart cultivation method, I can cultivate the divine heart power and open the second divine orifice. Unfortunately, I don't have the ancient god heart cultivation method. If I have enough ancient god heart energy, even if I don't have a heart cultivation technique, I can still open the second divine orifice. Looking at the boundless golden lake, Ningfan's eyes were filled with passion and helplessness from time to time. The golden lake contained some ancient god heart force, but not much. It wasn't enough for him to open the second divine aperture. If what the Luo Immortal King said was true, then this golden lake was the heart origin that only a 3-orifice ancient god could create. The heart of 3 apertures could form the heart source. The heart of 7 apertures could form the heart realm. A 2-apertured ancient god could increase their dermic power by 4 times as much when consuming pills. A 3-orifice ancient god would have 8 times the effect of consuming elixirs compared to ordinary people. Moreover, once they opened up their heart origin, their magic power would double due to the existence of the heart origin. Heart aperture. Heart source. Heart realm. Ning Fan's eyes flickered. He put away his complicated thoughts and retracted his aura force. Then he slowly stood up. When Sun Luo saw that Ning Fan's aura force had increased significantly, he nodded and said coldly, "Go to the 3rd floor." The first level of the Cave of Time was a sea of blood. The second level was the Golden Lake, where the ancient god heart essence was. The 3rd layer was a vast and boundless world filled with yellow sand. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, at the edge of the yellow sands, a lonely river could be seen in the distance. There was a pyramid-shaped golden altar on the endless yellow sand. On the golden altar, there was an ancient 7-pointed star formation that emitted a dazzling golden radiance. The gold-armored ancient god, who had the cultivation base of Shikong and had been following Sun Luo before, was now shackled to the center of the heptagram grand formation. His entire body was enveloped by the golden formation light, and his face was contorted with pain, moaning and begging. "Master, spare me! Master, I don't want to die! Master! This subordinate can't bear this ancient god power any longer." The golden ancient god was rolling on the ground and howling. Suddenly sensing Sun Luo's arrival, his eyes immediately became filled with fear. He bit his lips and didn't dare to let out an unnecessary groan. As soon as Ning Fan saw the golden-armored heavenly deity, his face immediately revealed a strange expression. If he didn't hear it wrong, this golden-armored heavenly god who was rolling on the ground and begging for mercy was the ancient god he had heard of before. Sun Luo's cold eyes swept across the golden-armored heavenly deity and said, "This person is a half-aperture ancient god. He didn't have enough luck to open up his first divine aperture. Thus, it's very difficult for him to bear the ancient god power of the quicksand heart. He is my 3rd primordial spirit. His name is 3rd god. Mutu's original name is 2nd god." Then he looked at the world of the golden desert and said, "This is the heart world that only a 7-aperture ancient god can open up. The heart world." It was said that during the primordial era, someone had cultivated a heart realm and cultivated it to the extreme realm, causing the heart realm to become a world that would exist as long as one believed in it. Moreover, it could provide the ancient gods with inexhaustible magic power. The 2nd level of the heart origin was opened by the quicksand ancestor. The 3rd level of the heart world was also opened by the quicksand ancestor by chance. Unfortunately, this heart world is incomplete. It can't provide the quicksand ancestor with an endless supply of magic power. However, this heart world contains an incomparably mysterious principle. World, idealism. The 3 realms are vain, and only one mind can do it. World, idealism. The 3 realms are vain, and only one mind can do it. Sun Luo's words were like raging waves that turned Ning Fan's heart upside down. It was a simple sentence, but it contained endless profound principles. It was completely different from what Ning Fan had known since he started cultivating the Tao. Idealism, idealism. It was a kind of power that was completely different from the laws that existed in the world. This sentence seemed to be describing everything that existed in this world except for one's own heart. Idealism was the truth. If one's heart is alive, all living things will be alive. If one's heart is destroyed, all living things will be destroyed. If one's heart is able to trace the trajectory of the world, one could create a world. In this world, as long as one believes in it, one could exist. Everything in this world was born from a single thought in one's heart. In this world, idealism was the truth. Materialism was an illusion. Idealism and materialism were 2 completely opposite concepts. They contained all the opposite great Taos in the world. When Ning Fan heard Sun Luo's words, he felt countless insights rising in his heart. When he wanted to carefully comprehend them, he realized that he did not understand anything. Mutu. This name doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound as good as 2 gods. While Ning Fan was seriously comprehending the Tao, Sun Luo suddenly frowned and said in a serious tone. Mutu. Two gods. Ning Fan's expression became strange again. His state of mind was already in a mess, and he no longer comprehended the Tao. He did not expect Sun Luo Immortal King to give his second and third primordial spirits such unpleasant names. Compared to the two gods, Mutu's name was countless times better. At least it was a normal name. Two gods, three gods. There were many cultivators in this world who did not know how to name themselves. 2 hours have passed, but Mutu's grand formation still hasn't been completed. The ancient god power in this heptagram formation is still not strong enough. The cries of the three gods are not tragic enough. This means that the ancient god heart of the flowing sand ancestor has yet to completely awaken. His grand formation has yet to be completed. Humph. Sun Luo's eyes scanned the strength of the formation light of the heptagram formation. He was displeased and let out a cold harumph. Mutu claimed that he could complete the grand formation in 2 hours and completely awaken the flowing sand ancestor. However, he did not fulfill his promise. Thus he must be punished. Sun Luo's body flashed, and he appeared below the sacrificial altar with a gloomy expression. He waited quietly. Ning Fan did not utter a single word from the beginning to the end. He followed closely behind Sun Luo and appeared below the sacrificial altar. Sun Luo was dissatisfied with Mutu's slow progress in setting up the formation, but he had no choice but to continue waiting. Ning Fan stood on the boundless yellow sand. With a thought in his mind, he lifted a finger and a mountain suddenly appeared above the flat sand. It was the illusion of a magic technique. As soon as the mountain appeared, it was already eroded and decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Soon, it turned into sand and dust. This place is filled with the power of time. It's so strong. Ning Fan's expression changed. His heart was filled with astonishment. The power of time in this place would attack anyone who was not an ancient god who enters this world. The three gods were half-aperture ancient gods while Ning Fan was a one-aperture ancient god. Sun Luo's heart had no aperture, but he had already forcefully devoured half of the power of the flowing sand ancestor. They would not be attacked by the power of time. However, once other things enter this world, they would face the danger of being eroded by the wind. Do you know what kind of ancient god bloodline the flowing sand ancestor cultivates? Sun Luo suddenly asked Ning Fan, who was beside him. Ning Fan did not expect that Sun Luo would ask him a question. He pondered for a moment and shook his head. I don't know. Is it the time bloodline? No. The time bloodline is also known as the Lost World bloodline. It's the unique ancient god bloodline of the Lost World primogenitor. Currently, there is only one junior who possesses this bloodline in the entire northern heaven. He seems to be a member of the Bei family of the Lost World Palace. In Eastern Heaven, no cultivator has ever cultivated the Lost World bloodline. The divine bloodline of the flowing sand ancestor is called the True Sun bloodline. The body of a true god that he cultivated is respectfully known as the God of Sun. Rumor has it that his power of time is born from the true Yang power. Sun Luo Immortal King said coldly. The True Sun bloodline? The power of time is born from the true Yang power. How is this possible? Ning Fan's eyes widened. With his experience, it was hard for him to understand the connection between the true Yang power and the power of time. One is the power of extreme Yang, and the other is the power of time. Where is the connection between the two? Why can the true Yang power give birth to the power of time? True Yang time. True Yang time. One Yang and one Yin. Ning Fan's eyes flashed with confusion. He seemed to have gained some enlightenment about the Tao, but he could not see through it. It was unknown if the Sun Luo Immortal King felt that the process of waiting was too boring, but he asked again. Have you heard of the heaven-suppressing treasure of the Eastern Heaven Immortal World? I have. The heaven-suppressing treasure of the Eastern Heaven Immortal World is called the heaven-suppressing bell. It's a treasure left behind by the ancestral emperor of the Eastern Heaven. The power of this bell is boundless. It is said that a single ring from this bell can destroy a world. Ning Fan answered. Of course, he had heard of the famous heaven-suppressing bell. Not only in Eastern Heaven, but also in the Sea of Clouds from Bei Li when he was still at the Divine Transformation realm. Come to think of it, The heaven-suppressing bell had quite a lot of connections with the Eastern Ocean bell that Ningfan had and the bell of Samsara that Yunhai of the Northern Heavens had. Ring the bell, and the world. Sunluo Immortal King sneered, then asked, "Have you heard of the Northern Heaven Immortal World's heaven-suppressing treasure?" "No." Ningfan shook his head. The heaven-suppressing treasure of the Northern Heaven Immortal Realm is made up of 9 pearls of extreme yang, called the Yin Fusion 9 pearls. These pearls were originally objects of extreme yang. Once they were activated, they would be as dazzling as the sun. When the 9 pearls were activated together, they could burn an entire world. However, the most powerful aspect of this bead is not its ability to attack with true yang energy, but rather its ability to produce yin energy from the extreme of yang, using true yang energy to refine the power of time. Yin Fusion 9 pearls. Extreme yang into yin. Ningfan's expression changed. All of a sudden, he recalled an incantation that Luo Yu had once taught him. There was a day in the Northern Sea whose name was Yin Rong. When Ningfan's cultivation base was still low, he had once used the Yin fusion power to suppress the true yang power of his enemies time and time again. He had heard of Yin fusion before. The heaven-suppressing treasure of the Northern Heaven was called the Yin Fusion 9 pearls. Ningfan wondered what the 2 words Yin fusion had to do with that incantation. In the current 4 heavens, there are very few people who know that there are actually 10 Yin fusion pearls instead of 9. The 10th pearl was found by the flowing sand ancestor by chance, and he forcefully devoured and refined it. Among the 10 Yin fusion pearls, the first pearl is the weakest and the 10th pearl is the strongest. The flowing sand ancestor cultivated the true yang energy. After devouring the 10th pearl, his extreme yang energy gave birth to yin energy, allowing him to cultivate the strongest power of time in the Eastern Heaven. His Tao of Time is even stronger than the orthodox bloodline of the Northern Heaven Lost World Palace. Sun Luo Immortal King said. The flowing sand ancestor devoured the 10th Yin fusion pearl? Ningfan's eyes widened. He suddenly recalled the golden statue of the flowing sand ancestor. That statue was holding a pearl that was comparable to a small sun. Could that pearl be the 10th Yin fusion pearl? The 10th Yin fusion pearl has been refined by the flowing sand ancestor. Perhaps there is still a fragment of the pearl left. Ningfan stroked his storage pouch. Inside the pouch, there was a fragment of the pearl that was filled with true yang energy lying quietly. At this moment, Ningfan was certain that the fragment of the pearl in his hand was the fragment of the 10th Yin fusion pearl. The 10th Yin fusion pearl was the strongest Yin fusion pearl. It was even stronger than the Northern Heaven suppressing treasure of the Lost World Palace. The 9 Yin fusion pearls. Ningfan's thoughts raced. Now that he had a fragment of the 10th pearl, he did not know what kind of fortune he would obtain. After keeping the excitement in his heart, Ningfan began to ponder about the great Tao of turning true yang extreme into time. Vaguely, he already understood that the connection between the true yang energy and the power of time lied in the phrase, extreme yang energy gives birth to yin energy. However, it was difficult to understand how the true yang energy and the power of time could be converted into each other. When talking about the strongest Tao of time of the flowing sand ancestor, Sun Luo's eyes became unprecedentedly fervent. His Tao of space was the strongest in the Eastern Heaven. If he could obtain the strongest Tao of time, his strength would certainly skyrocket. Gradually his eyes became blood red. Once he obtains that kind of power, he would definitely make the Godly Void Pavilion pay a heavy price this time. Sun Luo gradually calmed down and began to ponder every step of his plan to attack the heavenly prison. Occasionally, he would mutter to himself, which allowed Ningfan to guess part of Sun Luo's scheme. Ningfan, on the other hand, was pondering about the truth of the great Tao that Sun Luo Immortal King had inadvertently mentioned. Puzzled. What was the extreme of yang when the extreme of yang transforms into yin? How could the true yang transform into time? In the 3rd level of the desert world, it was already dusk. The sun was setting. Ningfan stood on the desert under the setting sun. His shadow was very long. In a daze, he lowered his head and saw the shadow under his feet. He raised his head and looked straight at the setting sun in the sky. Then he looked at the lonely desert river at the horizon. The lonely smoke of the great desert rose straight up. The The round sun set in the long river. He looked thoughtfully at the magic mountain that had already turned into sand and dust. He squatted down and scooped up a handful of quicksand. He looked at the quicksand flowing through his fingers and fell into deep thought. Under the sun, there would always be a shadow. No matter how tall a person was on the surface, there would still be a crooked shadow behind him. There was no perfection in this world. After the sun rose, the desert was extremely hot. As the sun set, the desert was bone-chillingly cold. Day and night alternated. Yin and yang converged. The beginning of yang was the time of sunrise. The extreme of yang was the time of sunset. At this moment, the sun turned into a crescent moon, and the day turned into the night. At this moment, the extreme of yang turned into yin. This was the principle of yin and yang. This principle could be applied to the transformation of yin and yang. When the true yang transforms into time, it was not as simple as the principle of yin and yang. Ningfan closed his eyes and pondered for a long time. Then he opened his eyes and looked at the setting sun in the west. Suddenly he understood something. The sun rose, the sun set, the moon rose and the moon set. The sun and the moon alternated. Yin and yang changed. Day after day, year after year. Among them, there was the passing of time and the existence of time. Time. The word light represented yang, the sun. The word yin represented yin and the moon. The extreme of yang transforms into yin, and the extreme of yin transforms into yang. Only by repeating this cycle could the power of time be produced. It could cause the passage of time, and cause the passage of time to corrode everything, erase everything and destroy everything. Ningfan looked at the sky again. He knew that from day to night, it was not only the transformation of yang and yin, the alternation of day and night, but also the passing of time. Ningfan held a handful of quicksand in his hands. He knew that the transformation from a mountain to a weathered rock, then to a gravel and dust, was also due to the passage of time. Humans would grow old because of the alternation of yin and yang, the change of the sun and moon and the passage of time. It was the passage of time that changed everything from the blue sea to the mulberry fields. Time was the passage of time. The true yang transformed into time. It was not enough to only have the true yang qi. One must cultivate the true yin qi at the same time, and change the yin and yang. Only then could the power of time be produced. The quicksand primogenitor didn't cultivate the true yin energy, so he resorted to trickery by devouring the yin dissolving pearl, and borrowing its energy to turn the true yang energy into yang, repeating the process over and over again. In this way he managed to cultivate the world-shocking time technique. Time was a supreme secret technique. The hardest thing to travel in this world was the heaven and earth. The hardest thing to retain was time. Ningfan clenched the quicksand in his hand tightly. The tighter he clenched, the bigger the gap between his fingers and the more quicksand disappeared. He couldn't grasp time. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't hold it. Life in the morning and death in the evening. The dead were like quicksand, unwilling to part with their youth. Time. Ningfan did not have the profound comprehension of the true Yang Dao like ancestor quicksand, nor did he cultivate the true yin technique systematically. He also did not have the complete yin melting pearl to devour to understand the essence of the change of yin and yang, and the wonder of the passage of time. However, he was the holder of the yin-yang locket, the successor of great Emperor Ancient Chaos, and the descendant of the yin-yang evil vein. Although his comprehension of the two words yin and yang wasn't profound, it was still considerable. Although it wasn't the most profound, it had a unique feeling. He could already use the power of the yin-yang locket to achieve the transformation of yin and yang. If he had enough true yang qi, he could turn yang into yin and the cycle of yin and yang. If he had enough true yin qi, he could turn yin into yang and the cycle of yin and yang. He had already understood the key to cultivating the power of time. He also had the yin-yang locket, a supreme treasure that could help him cultivate the power of time. What he lacked now was a medium to transform the power of time. He pressed his palm on his storage pouch again, and made up his mind. There were 25 red essence stones in his storage pouch. If he refined them, his true yang qi would be greatly enhanced. There were also items that seemed to be fragments of the yin melting pearl in his storage pouch. Once he refined them, his true yang qi would also be greatly enhanced. With these true yang qi and the trace of blood of time in his body, he should be able to cultivate the power of time that was not weak. With this power of time, he should be able to greatly enhance the power of his wind mist finger, giving him another shocking technique. If he had time, he could refine all of these true yang treasures. However, now wasn't the time. Rumble. A loud rumbling sound suddenly came from afar. The entire cave of time began to tremble violently. At this moment, Mutu, who was on the first level of the cave, had finished setting up the grand formation. He was praying that the Sun Luo Immortal King would not punish him for being too slow in setting up the formation. At this moment, the second cave at the bottom of the quicksand star ocean suddenly shone with golden light. The power of time suddenly increased, and it was comparable to the power of time in the cave of time. At this moment, the three gods who were imprisoned in the center of the heptagram formation suddenly screamed. Their voices were filled with pain. At this moment, Sun Luo's blood-red eyes flashed and he ordered Ningfan sternly, "You quickly enter the heptagram altar and help the three gods to share the power of the ancient god in the grand formation. This ancient god power is too huge. You should refine as much as you can. As for those that you can't, try to store them in your divine heart." After hearing his words, Ningfan wiped away the emotions of Tao enlightenment in his eyes and regained his calm expression. His body flashed and turned into a ray of traveling light, flying towards the heptagram grand formation. He knew that the awakening of the ancestral ancient god's heart had begun. The second cave, no, the second divine aperture had been awakened. At the moment when the second divine aperture was awakened, the ancient god power in the heptagram grand formation suddenly doubled. It was not something that the three gods could withstand. Ningfan knew that his current cultivation base was far from being able to refine such a huge amount of ancient god power. He could only refine a portion of it at most. The rest must be stored in his divine heart as a vessel for the Sun Luo Immortal King to use at any time. He had already heard a lot of plans from the Sun Luo Immortal King. He thought that he had agreed to temporarily be the vessel for the Sun Luo Immortal King's ancient god power in exchange for the little demonist's antidote. However, there was no turning back now. As soon as he landed on the heptagram altar, the mountain-like ancient god power immediately fell from the sky and pressed down on Ningfan fiercely. The space around him began to tremble. Intense pain immediately spread to his limbs and bones. However, he did not roll on the ground in pain like the three gods. He was not afraid of pain. His face was pale, and his body began to show signs of injuries. However, there was no fear in his eyes. Ningfan used the power of the black stars to heal his injuries while looking at the sky. His eyes were filled with a hint of passion. This overwhelming ancient god power was the purest power of the ancient god's divine heart. It was the power of the ancestral ancient god's heart. It could be used to break through the second divine aperture of the ancient god. The massive ancient god heart power flowed into Ningfan's body and was guided into his heart. On his heart, the golden light spot was located, and the ancient god power was rapidly rushing into it. A tiny hole was slowly forming. The second aperture of the ancient god. No more updates. Let's wash up and sleep. Chapter 778. Almost 90% of the ancient god power in the seven-pointed star formation surged towards him as soon as he opened a small hole in the second orifice of the ancient god. The three gods felt the pressure on them greatly reduced. They stood up from the ground and looked at Ningfan in disbelief. Currently, the ancient god aura on Ningfan's body was rising rapidly. Ningfan was just an early ghost profound realm expert. But he made the three gods who were at the abandoning void realm feel an invisible pressure, as if they were facing a superior being. That was the pressure that a low-level ancient god would feel when facing a high-level ancient god. It had nothing to do with cultivation base or bloodline grade. It can't be wrong. This is the aura of a two-aperture ancient god. This aura isn't solid. The second ancient god heart aperture that he has opened hasn't completely stabilized yet. The three gods took a deep breath and their eyes were filled with shock. Under the altar, Sun Luo Immortal King's blood-red eyes flashed, but he didn't show much emotion. Is this kid trying to use the ancient god heart power in the heptagram formation to open the second divine aperture? It's very risky to forcefully open the ancient god heart aperture in this way. If he succeeds, he will become a two-aperture ancient god. If he fails, his heart will be destroyed. He has consumed 466 ancient god heart lotuses. They might have laid the foundation for him to open the second aperture. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to forcefully open the ancient god heart aperture with his personality. Even so, there was only a 50-50 chance that this kid would succeed in opening his heart acupoint. Will he succeed in opening his heart acupoint, or will he fall? Senluo's eyes darkened. If Ningfan succeeds in becoming a two-aperture ancient god, it would be of great help to him. On the other hand, if Ningfan dies, it would greatly affect the success or failure of his plan. The three gods were useless and Mutu was not fated to become an ancient god. Ningfan was a good helper. In that case, if Ningfan fails to open the heart aperture, it would be better for him to save him. Otherwise he would lose a good container for the ancient god power. Humph. If this kid really fails to open the heart aperture, I will forcefully stop him from opening it and save him. Senluo snorted coldly. At the center of the heptagram formation, Ningfan's ancient god Qi was soaring and divine light shone brightly. He had already opened the second aperture of the ancient god. Under the continuous impact of the ancient god power, the aperture was expanding little by little. There was no joy in his eyes, only solemnity. At first, the second heart orifice was only the size of a needle hole. Gradually, the hole became bigger and bigger. Gradually, it became the size of a finger hole, the size of the first divine orifice. But the edge of the second heart aperture was still tearing, spreading to his heart, and then to his entire body. Suddenly, a black hole the size of a pinhole appeared on his left chest. The hole was already half the size of a pinhole. The second heart acupoint had been opened, but it was on the verge of collapse. The pain and the emptiness of his heart made his eyes. The pain that came from his heart, and the feeling of emptiness made his eyes look unprecedentedly solemn. He had truly underestimated the risk of forcibly opening the ancient god's heart aperture. As the saying goes, success is due to Xiaohe, failure is also due to Xiaohe. The reason why he was able to open his second heart orifice in one go was not only because of the enormous medicinal power of the ancient god heart lotus, but also because of the vast ancient god heart force in the seven stars radiance formation. Because the ancient god power was strong enough, Ningfan could open the second heart aperture in a short period of time. Because the ancient god power was too strong, the heart aperture was constantly impacted by the ancient god power, causing the heart aperture to collapse. Even his heart was on the verge of collapse. This method of forcefully opening the heart aperture was too risky. Without the help of the ancient god heart lotus, the success rate would be less than 5%. Even if Ningfan consumed a large amount of the lotus, there was only a 50% chance of opening the second heart aperture. The ancient god power was not cultivated step by step by Ningfan, so he couldn't control it freely. It was hard to control the power of the heart aperture. It was easy to invite a god, but hard to send one away. The expanding black hole reminded Ningfan that he must immediately think of a way to suppress the collapse of the heart aperture. If he allowed the black hole to expand, the consequences would be unimaginable. There was only one ending for him. His heart would be destroyed, his body would die, and then he would fall. The opening of the first heart aperture brought Ningfan endless pain. The opening of the second heart aperture gave him a 50% chance of dying. The heart aperture was indeed not easy to open, but so what? The more dangerous the situation was, the calmer Ningfan became. He clearly understood that the reason why he was facing such a crisis was because the amount of ancient god heart power that descended on his body was too huge. He alone bore 90% of the ancient god heart power of the sacrificial altar. The three gods in one person, on the other hand, only had to bear 10% of the heart power. In this case, as long as he diverted the excess ancient god heart power, the crisis would be resolved. Ningfan raised his head and glanced at the three gods at the side. All of a sudden, the three gods felt a chill down their spines. They couldn't understand why they would feel flustered when Ning Fan's gaze swept across them while they were obviously shedding space cultivators while Ning Fan was just a profound ghost cultivator. All of this was because Ning Fan's body contained 90% of the ancient god heart power of the sacrificial altar, which naturally gave off a terrifying aura. Suddenly Ning Fan raised his palm. The enormous ancient god heart power in his body condensed into an extremely dazzling golden ball of light. He flicked his finger towards the three gods. This golden ball of light contained almost 40% of the ancient god heart power of the sacrificial altar. To any ancient god, such a huge amount of ancient god heart power was considered as a great fortune. Any ancient god would benefit greatly from refining such a huge amount of ancient god heart power. As soon as the three gods saw the ball of light flying towards them, their eyes suddenly became filled with extreme shock and anger. They cursed loudly. Despicable. If you can't bear this ancient god heart power, you threw it to me. Junior, how dare you do this? He did not think that this ball of light was a fortune at all. Instead, he felt that it was a disaster. Even Ning Fan, who was a 2 apertures ancient god, did not have the fortune to enjoy this ancient god heart power. How would he dare to do so? He was just a half-aperture ancient god. He could not digest this ancient god heart power, and he did not dare to forcefully open his heart aperture with this heart power. Just bearing the ancient god aura pressure of this place was enough to make him feel unbearable pain. The ball of light flashed and disappeared. It turned into rays of golden light and exploded around the three gods at an extremely fast speed. Currently, the three gods were chained to the sacrificial altar. How could they avoid these countless rays of golden light? Each of these rays of golden light was the ancient god heart power of the quicksand primogenitor. Ning Fan and the three gods who were standing on the sacrificial altar had been bearing a portion of the ancient god heart power. Ning Fan was supposed to bear 90% of the heart power, but he did not hesitate to throw 40% of it to the three gods. At this moment, the ancient god heart power on the sacrificial altar was redistributed. Ning Fan and the three gods each bore 50% of the heart power. The three gods were not real 1 aperture ancient gods. They could not bear too much ancient god heart power at all. Immediately, they shrieked in pain. After Ning Fan diverted the excessive ancient god heart power in his body, he felt much more relaxed. The speed of the black hole in his heart was greatly reduced. He nodded with satisfaction. He ignored the cries of the three gods and sat cross-legged at the center of the sacrificial altar. He began to suppress the collapse of the second heart aperture bit by bit. The black hole in his heart shrunk bit by bit. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, the black hole in his heart completely disappeared. The size of the second heart aperture also returned to the size of a finger hole. The edges of the aperture were slowly stabilizing. Only now did the second heart aperture was completely opened. It would no longer collapse. Once the heart aperture was stabilized, Ning Fan let out a long breath. He was no longer afraid of the aura pressure brought by the ancient god heart power. He did not forget that he was the vessel of the ancient god heart power of the myriad immortal king. Once the heart aperture was stabilized, Ning Fan changed his hand seals. Using his heart as the vessel, he began to absorb the ancient god heart power from the sacrificial altar. Oh, the second heart aperture has been successfully opened? At this moment, Sun Luo revealed a surprised expression. He glanced at Ning Fan but did not say anything. In any case, Ning Fan, who had become a 2 aperture ancient god, would be of great help to his plan. Mutu slowly controlled the grand formation of the first level of the stone cave. In the quicksand star sea, the 3rd, 4th and 5th stone caves gradually turned golden. At the moment when the 6th stone cave turned golden, the divine heart of the quicksand ancestor was completely awakened. The strength of the ancient god heart power in the 7-pointed star altar reached its peak at this moment. Ning Fan sat cross-legged at the center of the sacrificial altar, like a grain of corn in the vast ocean. The entire sacrificial altar now contained half of the ancient god heart power of the quicksand ancestor. Outside the sacrificial altar, the body of the myriad immortal king also contained half of the ancient god heart power. It was the part of heart power that he had forcefully seized from the quicksand star sea. Even though Sun Luo's cultivation base was high, he was not an ancient god. It was already his limit to withstand half of the quicksand ancestor's heart power. Because he could not take away all of the heart power, he decided to stay in the quicksand star region and continue to seek for the remaining heart power. Therefore, he needed a vessel, a carrier to help him store the heart power. The three gods were an inferior vessel while Ningfan was a superior one. Ningfan kept sealing the vast ancient god heart power in his heart acupoint. After he opened the second heart acupoint, this massive ancient god heart power was no longer of much use to him. With the risk of opening the second heart acupoint, he did not plan to continue opening the third heart acupoint recklessly with the help of such a massive ancient god heart power without any preparation. Even though he had consumed the ancient god heart lotus to lay the foundation for the opening of the second heart acupoint, he still nearly died during the process. He was not prepared for the opening of the third heart acupoint. He did not plan to take a greater risk and risk his life to open the third heart acupoint. He sealed the ancient god heart power in his heart acupoint and did not use it recklessly. Instead, he left it for Sun Luo to use at any time. In Sun Luo's plan, he was just a vessel for the heart power to temporarily store the heart power. When Sun Luo needed it, he would use it all at once. The quicksand ancestor was a 6 apertures ancient god. Sun Luo had forcefully absorbed the heart power of 3 apertures. Ningfan was already a 2 apertures ancient god. Gradually, both of his heart acupoints were filled with the recovered heart power of the quicksand ancestor. He could not seal any more. Ningfan's existence was to act as the 2 heart acupoints of Sun Luo. The 3 gods were just half apertures ancient gods. After Ningfan had sealed countless ancient god heart powers, the ancient god aura pressure on the 7-pointed star altar was reduced by 2/3. The anguished expression on the 3 gods' faces faded away. They stood up again and glared at Ningfan with extreme resentment. Ningfan, on the other hand, gave them an indifferent look. "Junior, you better remember what happened just now." The 3 gods were so angry that they laughed and threatened him. Ningfan acted as if he did not hear their threats. He sat cross-legged on the altar to regulate his breathing. Then he consumed a pill and closed his eyes without saying a word. Sealing the ancient god heart power had consumed a lot of Ningfan's magic power. He was busy recovering his magic power. How would he have the time to deal with the 3 gods? 3 gods? It seems like you haven't completed your task yet. Sun Luo, who was outside the altar, suddenly spoke coldly and reminded them. As soon as they heard Sun Luo's words, the 3 gods' expressions changed drastically. They no longer had the mood to provoke Ningfan. They immediately sat cross-legged on the ground like Ningfan and formed hand seals to seal the scattered ancient god heart powers into half of their heart acupoints. His body was bound by countless shackles. Every movement he made would cause the shackles to jingle. Gradually, half of the heart acupoints of the 3 gods were filled with the ancient god heart powers. There were still a lot of ancient god heart powers flowing above the altar. However, he no longer had the strength to seal them. "Master, I have reached my limit. I can't seal any more ancient god heart powers." The 3 gods looked at Sun Luo and smiled apologetically. 3 apertures, 2 apertures, half apertures, 5.5 apertures, less than 6 apertures, less than 6 apertures. I won't be able to unleash the full power of the quicksand ancestor's ability. Sun Luo seemed to be calculating and muttering to himself. He did not even look at the 3 gods. In a flash, his figure vanished without a trace. At the next moment, he appeared on the altar, standing between Ningfan and the 3 gods. He was holding a rhombus-shaped blood-red crystal in his hand. It contained an incomparable aura of vicissitudes. Ningfan's gaze swept across the crystal, and his eyes widened in shock. A memory about this item had appeared in his ancient god bloodline out of nowhere. Thus he recognized this item. It was called the Crystal of the Death God. It was a type of immemorial secret treasure. Each piece of the Crystal of the Death God was made from the hearts of 10,000 ancient gods. It could only be formed after 100,000 years of refinement. In order to form a piece of crystal, one needed to kill 10,000 ancient gods and extract their hearts to refine the crystal. After consuming this crystal, there was a certain chance of directly opening the heart acupoint of an ancient god. However, there was also a certain chance of suffering a backlash. In order to refine this piece of crystal, one needed to kill 10,000 ancient gods. This item used the power of the heart of the death god to provide for the god of life's cultivation. That was why it was called the crystal of the death god. Everyone could only consume one piece of the crystal of the death god in their lifetime. If one forcefully consumes the second piece, there was a 30% chance that he would die. If one forcefully consumes the third piece, he would die 10,000 times. If one forcefully consumes the fourth piece, he would definitely die. The higher the grade of the crystal of the death god, the more prominent the effect of opening the heart acupoint. The more heart acupoints there were, the weaker the effect of consuming the crystal of the death god. The grade of the crystal of the death god was determined by the grade of the 10,000 hearts of the ancient gods. Holding the crystal of the death god in his hand, Sun Luo looked at Ning Fan and the three gods and sneered. This is my third piece of the crystal of the death god. It is also my last piece. Three gods, are you willing to consume it to increase the number of heart acupoints of the ancient gods, and help me complete the sixth acupoint? And Master, please spare my life. When I consumed the first piece of the crystal of the death god, I was unlucky enough to suffer a backlash. After consuming the second piece, I could barely open half of the heart acupoint. You must not let me consume the third piece. I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. After consuming the third piece of the crystal of the death god, I will only be able to successfully open the heart acupoint once after dying 10,000 times. The hope is slim. The hope is slim. When the three gods heard that Sun Luo intended to let them consume the third piece of the crystal of the death god, their faces were filled with fear. Half of the heart acupoint was opened by luck because of consuming two pieces of the crystal of the death god. The crystal of the death god was a supreme treasure that Sun Luo Immortal King found by chance. There were originally 5 of them. After he consumed one piece, his luck was not good and he failed to open the heart acupoint. There was a chance that he would die after consuming the second piece. Naturally, he would not consume it again. He gave one piece to Mutu, but he failed to open the heart acupoint. After he gave 2 pieces to the 3 gods, they finally opened the heart acupoint. Now he only had one last piece of the crystal of the death god in his hand. He wanted to use this piece of crystal of the death god to gather the number of 6 acupoints to return to the divine void realm and attack the heavenly prison. Seeing that the 3 gods were timid and did not dare to consume the crystal of the death god, Sun Luo sneered and turned to look at Ning Fan. Sun Luo did not plan to waste this piece of crystal on the 3 gods. His plan was to give it to Ning Fan in order to gather the number of 6 acupoints. When he saw Sun Luo looking at him, Ning Fan naturally understood that Sun Luo wanted to give this treasure to him. However, before Sun Luo could say anything, deafening rumbles suddenly resounded across the entire world of the black hole and spread across the entire quicksand star sea, reaching the ears of everyone in the cave of time. It was the sound of something breaking. The world of the black hole seemed to be suffering from some kind of extremely powerful attack. It was breaking and collapsing bit by bit. Humph! The Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor are really fast. They actually came to this star region in less than a day. Sun Luo's eyes turned cold. Then he revealed an evil sneer and threw the crystal of the death god in his hand to Ning Fan. This item is for you to refine. No mistakes are allowed. Just as his voice fell, Sun Luo had already disappeared without a trace with a piercing whistle. Sun Luo knew that the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor had already arrived at the Quicksand Star region. Now that the 2 emperors were here, he must fight them. He certainly would not avoid this battle. Sorry for the late update. Go wash and sleep. Chapter 779. Just as Sun Luo left, 2 traces of extremely ancient aura force suddenly appeared in the world of the black hole and pressed down on the entire world. Ning Fan had just caught the Death God crystal. Before he could react, he was suppressed by the aura force. Being caught off guard, he was actually frozen on the spot by the aura force, unable to move. One of the aura force gave people a feeling like the vast starry sky. It was illusory and boundless, unfathomable and unfathomable. The other aura force gave people a domineering feeling. It was like the brightest and most dazzling sunlight. It was scorching, stinging and dazzling, making people unable to look at it directly. Both of these aura forces were the aura force of immortal emperors. Their ancient aura force was enough to make the entire galaxy tremble. It's the Divine Void Emperor duo. They have caught up to us. This is bad. Even though Master is strong, he isn't a match for them. I don't want to be locked up in the heavenly prison again. In the first level of the Cave of Time, Mutu's expression changed drastically after being intimidated by the aura force of the two emperors. Divine Void Emperor duo. How did they catch up to us so quickly? On the third level of the sacrificial altar, the three divine eyes were filled with fear. His body began to tremble uncontrollably. The Divine Void Emperor duo, huh? Ning Fan secretly activated the aura force of his ancestral grade demon blood and devil blood, and slightly activated the Ghost Face Spirit Equipment's ability to resist the aura force. Only then did he manage to resist the aura force of the two emperors slightly, and regain his mobility. Ning Fan's eyes became more and more solemn as he scanned the world of the black hole outside the cave with his spirit sense. The boundless world of the black hole was forcefully broken open by someone. From that opening, one could see the empty scenery of the quicksand star region outside. At the opening, two immortal emperors who were emitting seven-colored light shattered the world of the black hole, and stepped into the world at the same time. Currently, Ning Fan was already a second-step cultivator. However, he still could not see the faces of the two immortal emperors clearly. He could only vaguely see that one of them was a white-haired old man who was standing on an illusory silver dragon soul. His face could not be seen clearly. That person was the Void Emperor. The other immortal emperor was clad in golden armor. His body was tall and sturdy. Even though Ning Fan could not see his face clearly, he seemed to be able to sense his domineering and arrogant gaze. This immortal emperor was standing on a golden cloud, and there were 6 golden orbs of light around him. One could vaguely sense that there was a treasure protecting him within the orbs of light, but one couldn't see what it was. This person was Emperor Shen Kong. Sun Luo, long time no see. How have you been? Emperor Shen Kong sneered and looked forward. In that direction, a crimson-haired figure slowly appeared. It was Senro, junior brother. The Void Emperor sighed and looked at Sun Luo, not knowing what to say. Sun Luo laughed coldly. He did not even look at Emperor Shen Kong, and completely ignored him. His gaze met the Void Emperor's, and Sun Luo's expression turned even colder. Senior brother, are you here to capture me and bring me back to the heavenly prison? Junior brother, follow me back to the heaven prison. Don't kill anymore. The Void Sovereign closed his eyes and let out a long sigh. Kill more? Heh, senior brother's words are quite interesting. The number of people that senior brother has killed might not be less than mine. When you kill people, you are enforcing justice on behalf of heaven. When I kill people, I am killing more. What a joke. Sun Luo laughed loudly, and his expression was full of disdain. The spatial monarch frowned and let out a sigh. Emperor Shen Kong snorted coldly and said to the Void Sovereign sternly, "Why bother talking nonsense with this evil creature? Just capture him and bring him back to the heaven prison." As soon as he finished speaking, Emperor Shen Kong took a step forward. As he took a step, a large amount of golden divine light swept out from his body and turned into a golden seal that pressed down on Senluo's head. The momentum of this golden seal was earth-shattering, and it created countless golden ravines in the void. Like a swimming dragon, it flew in all directions. Divine King Seal. I wasn't afraid of your Divine King Seal back then. Now I won't be afraid either. Senluo's expression was cold, and he exuded endless chilliness. He took a huge step forward, and his body was surrounded by crimson rainbows. His red hair danced in the wind. He was an immortal king who had passed the 5th tribulation, while Emperor Shen Kong was an immortal king who had passed the 8th tribulation. The difference in their cultivation was huge, but Sun Luo wasn't afraid of Shen Kong at all. As the golden seal fell, Sun Luo didn't run or hide. He just waved his sleeves, and millions of crimson stars appeared in the void. The golden seal pulled in all the forces of the heaven and earth, and it turned into millions of crimson stars that fell on Sun Luo like rain. It gave off a deafening sound, and countless void storms were set off. The The power of each golden print smashing down was comparable to the power of a low-level cultivation planet exploding. While bathed in the crimson starlight, Senluo's eyes remained cold. Although the golden seal was powerful, his crimson star's self-recovery ability was stronger. The divine king seal couldn't hurt him. Senluo smiled disdainfully. He suddenly raised his hand and grabbed the void in front of him. The force of this grab caused an unimaginable collapse of the void. The millions of golden seal shadows in the void collapsed and scattered. The divine king seal is just SOS, Senluo said disdainfully. Shameless boasting. Emperor Shenkong's spell was broken, and his expression turned extremely ugly. He waved his sleeves angrily, and the 6 golden balls of light around him revealed their true forms. They were 6 golden skulls. These 6 golden skulls were refined from the skulls of cultivators. They were at least the skulls of 3rd or 4th Tribulation Celestial Kings. There were naturally skulls of 5th Tribulation Celestial Kings as well. One of the skulls was even refined from the skull of a sub-emperor. Emperor Shenkong raised his hand and pointed. A golden ray of light shot out from his finger, which split into 6 and entered the 6 skulls. At this moment, the shadow of a huge golden tombstone appeared behind Emperor Shenkong. The appearance of the tombstone was somewhat similar to the steel of sun and moon, but it wasn't exactly the same. The 6 skulls flashed and turned into 6 withered skeleton cultivators in golden robes. These 6 withered skeleton cultivators were all celestial kings, and their cultivation ranged from 3rd Tribulation to sub-emperor. Once the 6 of them appeared, they immediately charged towards Senluo emotionlessly. Tombstone technique. This technique is one of the strongest spells of the divine space scripture. Unfortunately, with your aptitude, I'm afraid you will never be able to cultivate this technique to the realm of Summon Emperor Bone. The 6 king bones is already your limit. The disdain in Senluo's eyes intensified. He suddenly opened his mouth and spat out 8 rays of blood light. The 8 rays of blood light circled around him and revealed their true forms, which were the shadows of 8 blood-red skulls. These 8 blood-red skulls were the skulls of sub-emperors. At this moment, a huge shadow of a blood-red tombstone appeared behind Senluo. The 8 skulls of sub-emperors shone with blood light and turned into 8 withered skeleton cultivators in blood-red robes. These 8 people were all sub-emperors. When the 8 of them joined forces, they could even fight against a 6th Tribulation Celestial Emperor. Impossible. You have never received the orthodox inheritance of the divine space scripture. How could you cultivate this technique to the realm of 8 king bones? The Shun Space Thearch's eyes widened in shock as he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. The Void Tharch sighed again. He knew that his junior brother's aptitude was high and that he was the best in the divine void realm. After the ancestor of the divine void realm, there was no one who could surpass him. Senluo had not received the orthodox inheritance of the divine space scripture. But even the Tao of divine space Tharch of the divine space Tharch was not as powerful as Senluo. Senluo had received the orthodox inheritance of the divine space scripture. After the ancestor of the divine void realm, no one could surpass Senluo in the Tao of void. This person's aptitude was too high and shocking. If it was not for the fact that he could not get rid of his obsession, he would have already broken through and become an emperor. Even though he had not entered the 6th Tribulation of Eternity and had not entered the Emperor realm, Senluo's strength was enough to sweep away all 6th Tribulation Celestial Emperors. His realm was the same as the Great Elder of the Slaughter Hall, the Nether Sea Immortal King. However, his strength was not comparable to Nether Sea. The 6 golden-robed immortal kings and the 8 blood-robed quasi-emperors fought against each other, and soon, the outcome of the battle was decided. The 8 people summoned by Senluo had won. The figures of the golden-robed immortal kings were crushed by the blood-robed quasi-emperors. The Shun Space Thearch's expression became uglier, and the murderous intent in his golden eyes became sharper. He opened his mouth and spat out a golden flame pearl. With a change of hand seal, the golden flame pearl immediately turned into billions of golden flames and suns and bombarded Senluo. Khanate treasure. Fire immunity pearl? Back then, you used this to sneak attack me and I was injured badly. Now this thing can't hurt me. Roar. Senluo suddenly raised his head and let out an earth-shattering roar. He did not use much magic power in this roar. What he used the most was his murderous aura, and a lifetime of demonic thoughts. Endless blood-red flames spread out from under Senluo's feet, and swept across the void in all directions, turning into a sea of blood-red flames. The blood-red flames were the flames of his murderous aura, and they were formed by Senluo's killing. His roar carried a blood-red sound circle that shook the void in all directions. The crazy roar and countless blood-red ripples reverberated throughout heaven and earth. At this moment, the demonic thoughts on Senluo's body were monstrous and his aura was terrifying. At this moment, Senluo's eyes looked down on everything. His demonic roar contained a great magical power that could incinerate and melt everything. Under this demonic roar, even the starry sky would tremble. Even heaven and earth would have to yield to it. Circles of blood-red ripples swept across the fire immunity pearl. Every time they swept across, the fire immunity pearl would tremble violently and let out an earth-shattering roar. A crack appeared on it. After a few breaths, the fire immunity pearl shook violently and broke into two halves from the middle. It was almost destroyed. The demonic roar still reverberated in the void for a long time. The Shin Space Tharch turned pale with fright and hurriedly formed a hand seal to retrieve the fire immunity pearl. He was afraid that the fire immunity pearl would be completely destroyed and could no longer be repaired. At this moment, his ears were still reverberating with a buzzing sound. The demonic roar entered his body and messed up his breathing. He was forced to retreat a few hundred steps in the void before he could stabilize his body. Every step he took would cause the entire heaven and earth to tremble. Shin Space, you alone won't be able to take him down. The Void Tharch sighed. He rode the silver dragon and flew to the side of the Shin Space Tharch. His murky eyes suddenly shone brightly. With a wave of his sleeves, the demonic roar that filled the entire heaven and earth was dispersed. The Void Tharch had finally decided to join the battle. Although he and the Shin Space Tharch seemed to be united, they were actually divided. However, when it came to matters of right and wrong, the Shin Space Tharch and the Shin Space Tharch had always been on the same side. He had the best relationship with his junior brother. However, because of what happened in the past, the crack between them could no longer be mended, and his junior brother would never turn back. The only thing he could do was to forcefully take down Senluo and send him back to the heaven prison. Only then would he be able to avoid making more mistakes. Forget it. Let's work together and capture this evil creature back to the heaven prison. The Shin Space Tharch snorted coldly. The current Senluo was much stronger than he was in the past. The various divine abilities of the Shin Space Tharch were restrained by Senluo. Although his cultivation base was high, it was hard for him to make full use of the advantage of his realm. It would not be easy for him to take down Senluo alone. However, if the God Void Tharch and the Shin Space Tharch joined forces, no matter how strong Senluo was, he would still be defeated. Senior brother, you must capture me back to the heaven prison. Is that so? Senluo said coldly. Yes. The Void Tharch sighed. However, his eyes were even more resolute. Hearing this, the corner of Senluo's mouth curled up, and he revealed an evil sneer. Heaven prison, I will go back. However, not now and not in this way. If I am not willing, even if the two of you come together, what can you do to me? Emperor technique, dark prison. Senluo suddenly raised his finger and pointed at the God Void Tharch and the Shin Space Tharch. The endless black hole world collapsed completely at this moment and turned into countless black fragments. After the fragments collapsed, they reformed and turned into two black cages. They were airtight and sealed the God Void Tharch and the Shin Space Tharch in the cages. What? This bastard has even successfully cultivated the Void Scripture's dark prison technique. The God Void Tharch exclaimed in shock. Even the Void Tharch revealed a look of disbelief. The two Thearchs simultaneously attacked and tried to break the black cages imprisoning the two of them. However, they discovered that even with their cultivation, they were unable to break the cages in a short period of time. The dark prison isolated the two of them from the rest of the world. This dark prison technique could be used to attack and imprison powerful enemies. When used for defense, it could even block the attacks of an 8 Tribulation immortal emperor. The two Thearchs continued to use their techniques, but were unable to break the dark prison technique. Naturally, with the defense of the dark prison technique, Sunluo could not harm the two of them. Seeing that the two Thearchs were trapped, Sunluo sneered and swallowed the entire quicksand star sea into his stomach. At this moment, the black hole world had collapsed, and the final step of the Sunluo plan was nearing completion. It was time to return to the God Void Tharch. Taking out the East Sea Star plate, Sunluo's blood-red eyes flashed coldly. He identified a direction, and turned into a shocking blood-red light that charged toward the East Sea Star region. Along the way, the domain-locking formations of the star regions were all broken by Sunluo. Any cultivation planet that blocked his way was shattered by Sunluo's fist. Any cultivator that blocked his way was directly smashed into a bloody pulp by Sunluo's light. The life immortals and perfected immortals along the way had already sensed Sunluo's monstrous demonic aura, and were all horrified. In the eastern sky, some thought-shattering old monsters, celestial sovereigns, and celestial kings that had lived for a very long time were horrified when they sensed Sunluo's aura. Those that recognized Sunluo's aura, and weren't celestial emperors, all revealed expressions of fear. Sunluo was a devil that caused chaos in the eastern sky 45 million years ago. With the power of one person, this devil covered half of the God Void Tharch and destroyed 107 high-grade star regions. During that era, 1/10 of the perfected immortals in the eastern sky died at his hands. The number of life immortals and first-step cultivators he killed was innumerable. The number of cultivation planets he destroyed was even more innumerable. He was still alive. He was still alive. There was a dimensional world inside Sunluo Immortal King's body. The entire quicksand star sea was swallowed by him. Ning Fan's face was filled with astonishment. In the past, he only thought that Sunluo was very strong, and was comparable to the Nether Sea Immortal King. However, he didn't know that Sunluo's strength was actually far stronger than the Nether Sea Immortal King. He had even surpassed many 6th Tribulation Immortal Emperors, and was comparable to the 7th Tribulation Immortal Emperors. Even the Divine Void Immortal Emperors could not capture Sunluo in one go. Instead, their abilities were broken by Sunluo, and they were trapped in the quicksand star region. In that case, the second Jade Slip could not cause too much trouble to Sunluo at all. Only the third Jade Slip could summon the Slaughter Emperor and subdue Sunluo. Fortunately, judging from the current situation, Sunluo did not have any killing intent towards Ning Fan. The two of them used each other and lived in harmony. The various abilities of Sunluo replayed in his mind. Ning Fan let out a devil roar, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. He always felt that Sunluo's abilities had many things that were worth comprehending. While he was pondering, Sunluo's displeased voice suddenly resounded in his ears. "Junior, have you seen enough? If you have, quickly refine the Death God Crystal, and help me fight the Divine Void Immortal Realm." After being reminded by Sunluo, Ning Fan remembered that he still had a piece of Death God Crystal in his hand. Yes, his top priority was to refine the Death God Crystal instead of comprehending Sunluo's abilities and secret techniques. He did not have a good impression of the Divine Void Pavilion, because of the poison in Little Demonist's body. He did not have any opinion on Sunluo's plan to destroy the Divine Void Immortal Realm, and attack the Heavenly Prison. There was only one thing in his mind: to refine the Death God Crystal, and help Sunluo accomplish his goal. After that, he would ask Sunluo to cure Little Demonist's poison. He did not have a good impression of Sunluo, nor did he have a bad impression of him. He did not want to get involved in the grudge between Sunluo and the Divine Void Immortal Realm. He was just a bystander. After refining the Death God Crystal, make some fireworks for me. And I want those with lotus patterns. Sunluo ordered again. All right. Then he swallowed the crystal of the Death God and slowly refined it. At the side, the three gods who were chained swallowed their saliva. Their hearts were filled with lingering fear when they saw Ning Fan swallowing the Death God Crystal. He had consumed the Death God Crystal twice. He understood how dangerous and painful the process of refining it was. This kid is just a ghost profound realm expert after all. Perhaps he can't withstand the heart-devouring myriad deities of the Death God Crystal. The three gods shook their heads in disdain. They looked at Ning Fan quietly, trying to see the pain on his face and hear the wails from his mouth. However, they were disappointed. After consuming the death god crystal, Ning Fan closed his eyes and sat cross-legged without saying a word. He did not show any emotion nor did he make any sound. It was as if he had never consumed the death god crystal. How is this possible? The pain of the heart devouring myriad deities is so dangerous that even I can't bear it. How can he endure it so calmly? The astonishment in the three gods' eyes grew. They could feel that the ancient god aura pressure in Ning Fan's body had begun to increase. In his mind, Ning Fan was standing in a world that was reversed from the normal world. It was a strange world that he did not know. The sky was below and the earth was above. He was walking in this world. It was desolate and dead silent. All of a sudden, countless killing intent came from the end of the earth. From all directions, there were countless giants who were as tall as the sky. They were walking towards him with ancient footsteps. Each of the giants had a black hole in their chest. Their hearts were no longer there. Heart, give me your heart. One by one, the giants came from all directions and approached Ning Fan. All of a sudden, a giant rotten hand broke out from the ground and reached out towards Ning Fan. Chapter 780. All of a sudden, a giant rotten hand broke out from the ground and reached out towards Ning Fan. A putrid gray chi spread out from the giant hand, making one feel nauseous just by smelling it. A strong gust of wind blew, and the gray chi turned into a giant gray dragon. It opened its mouth and swallowed Ning Fan. Ning Fan's body turned into a wisp of green smoke and disappeared from his original spot. At the next moment he appeared in the sky. He raised his palm and pressed it against the gray dragon. Then he looked down at the ground with a grim expression. The ground kept cracking and giant rotten corpses crawled out from the ground. All of the rotten corpses had black holes in their chests. None of them had a heart. Each of the rotten corpses had an extremely dense ancient god chi. They were the corpses of ancient gods. Among the group of ancient corpses, there was an ancient god corpse with dragon horns on its head. Its body was surrounded by dragon-shaped gray chi. Its aura force was like a mountain, carrying an unusually vast pressure. It was completely different from the corpses of ordinary ancient gods. Roar! The giant corpses crawled out from the ground and roared at the sky. Their voices were filled with endless resentment. Some of the giant corpses began to wave their fists at the sky. Heaven and earth were instantly filled with countless ancient divine lights. Without any hesitation, Ning Fan turned into green smoke again and evaded the fists. His eyes were fixed on the ancient corpse with dragon horns and he remained silent. All of a sudden, several spatial cracks appeared in the sky. Giant rotten hands reached out from the cracks and grabbed at Ning Fan when he least expected it. Among the countless giant hands, there were countless traces of gray chi which turned into the demon form of a gray fire sparrow. It attacked Ning Fan ferociously like the wind. Ning Fan's expression changed slightly. Without saying a word, he summoned the memory-severing Dao sword. The sword produced countless illusory sword lights and killed the gray demonic sparrow. Then he raised his hand and cut off the countless giant rotten hands. After a series of loud noises, countless giant hands were cut into pieces by the sword lights and exploded into countless traces of gray chi. Then the giant corpses whose arms were cut off walked out from the spatial cracks one after another. They roared at Ning Fan furiously, as if they resented him for cutting off their arms. Among this group of giant corpses, there was an ancient god corpse with gray fire wings. Its aura force was extremely vast, which was completely different from ordinary ancient corpses. On the ground in all directions, countless giant rotten corpses were approaching Ning Fan step by step. In just a few breaths, the ancient corpses in the distance had all closed in. Among this group of ancient corpses, there were two giant ancient gods with exceptionally vast auras. One of them had the head of a tiger and the lower body of a human. The other person was a fat giant who carried a huge turtle shell on his back. Underground in the sky, in the cracks in space, there were ancient god corpses everywhere. However, only the four ancient corpses could give him a sense of danger. Ancient dragon horn corpse. Flame-wing ancient corpse. Tiger-headed ancient corpses. Ancient tortoise-shelled corpse. Among these ancient god corpses, most of them were one-apertured ancient gods, a small number of them were two-apertured ancient gods, and a small number of them were three-apertured ancient gods. Most of the ancient god corpses with one aperture possessed void fragmentation realm cultivation base. Most of the ancient god corpses had the cultivation of life immortals. Most of the ancient god corpses with three orifices had the cultivation of the crossing truth realm. There were only 4 ancient corpses here, and they were the corpses of three-apertured ancient gods. Ningfan's figure flickered continuously in the sky. He used his spirit sense to scan the surroundings and his expression turned grim. After a rough count, he found out that there were 10,000 one-apertured ancient gods, 81 two-apertured ancient gods and 4 three-apertured ancient gods. 10,000 one-apertured ancient god corpses waved their fists at Ningfan at the same time. Divine light dazzled the world and the light from their fists shook the heavens. Large areas of the hollow space collapsed one after another. The ground could not stop trembling. For some unknown reason, the 81 two-apertured ancient gods and the 4 three-apertured ancient gods did not immediately join in the attack. Since they were just attacks from one-apertured ancient gods, Ningfan was not afraid no matter how many ancient gods there were. Ningfan raised his hand and summoned the memory-severing Dao sword. He made a hand seal and the sword turned into 108,000 sword shadows, setting up a sword formation. Rays of illusory sword light began to rampage and kill in the sword formation. Groups of one-apertured ancient gods were killed by the sword light, exploding into traces of gray chi. Every time an ancient god was killed, a trace of gray chi would fly out from the black hole in the ancient god's chest and enter Ningfan's body. Once the gray chi entered his body, it would rush to his heart, causing an excruciating pain as if his heart was being torn apart. At the same time, it would deprive his heart of its life force bit by bit. Ningfan used the illusory sword formation to kill all one-apertured ancient gods. Immediately, 10,000 traces of gray chi appeared in his body. Boundless pain assaulted him. Ningfan's breathing became sluggish. His face immediately turned abnormally red, and his chi began to become slightly chaotic. His heart was tainted by countless traces of gray chi. At the moment when the gray chi appeared, Ningfan lost control of his mind. He almost wanted to break free from this illusory realm. This was one of the reasons why countless people failed to open up their divine apertures after consuming the death god's crystal. A fragile heart could not resist the corrosion of the gray chi at all. The strength of one's heart had nothing to do with one's cultivation level. It was closely related to one's ancient god realm. Cultivators who were not ancient gods would immediately be corroded by the gray chi once they come into contact with it. They would be forced to break free from the illusory realm forcefully, causing the refinement of the death god's crystal to fail. Even ordinary one-apertured ancient gods would not be able to resist the corrosion of 10,000 traces of gray chi at the same time. Those who are heartless will die. Those who are heartless will die. Those who are heartless will die. We are unwilling to accept this. The remaining 81 two-apertured ancient gods' corpses and 4 three-apertured ancient gods' corpses roared furiously. Ningfan's mind gradually lost control. The illusory realm in front of him split into 2 and then into 4. As the number of changes increased, he could no longer see anything clearly. Heaven and earth seemed to be shaking, and everything began to blur. At this moment, it was not the heaven and earth or the illusory realm that was wavering. It was Ningfan's heart. At this moment, it was also Ningfan's heart that might suffer the backlash. The roars of the ancient gods' corpses echoed in his ears. Suddenly, Ningfan realized that the gray chi in his body was growing bit by bit. The amount of gray chi was increasing, and it contained endless negative emotions. Resentment, anger, unwillingness, jealousy, greed, fear, despair, sorrow. Ningfan vaguely had an epiphany. His eyes turned sharp and he shouted coldly. His divine heart emitted countless rays of divine light, slightly dispersing part of the gray chi. His eyes regained some clarity. As expected, this gray chi is the combination of all the negative emotions of the fallen ancient gods. Ningfan's eyes turned cold, and he muttered to himself. To open the first aperture of an ancient god, he relied on the opportunity given by Ancestor Yu. It was not the right way. To open the first aperture, he had to endure the pain of severing his heart for 1,000 years. After that, he opened the first heart aperture, and his heart became even more persevering. He was no longer afraid of any pain. Even though he used the ancient god heart lotus to build a good foundation for opening the second aperture, he was still on the verge of danger. Fortunately, he was calm and decisive in the face of danger. He abandoned the excess ancient god heart force to ensure the success of opening the heart aperture. After opening the second aperture, his heart became calmer. The more serious the situation was, the more he could calm himself down and not lose his composure. The third aperture was the divine aperture that Ning Fan was trying to open by consuming the death god crystal. The process was filled with endless negative emotions. Those were all the emotions left behind by the 10,000 ancient gods after they lost their divine hearts. I must eliminate all these negative emotions. The divine light on Ning Fan's body became stronger and stronger. That divine light came from his heart. He was a two-aperture ancient god. His heart was already strong enough to suppress all these negative emotions. The gray qi in his divine heart gradually disappeared amidst a sizzling sound. The gray qi was not expelled from Ning Fan's body. Instead, it was forcefully refined by him. Why would he be afraid of these negative emotions? Every time he refined a bit of gray qi, his divine heart would become stronger. After refining 10,000 traces of gray qi, a gray light spot slowly appeared above his divine heart. That light spot was right beside the second divine aperture. That spot was the location to open the third divine aperture. I can obtain gray qi by killing the ancient god corpses in the illusory realm. Refining this gray qi might increase the ancient god heart force and help me open the heart aperture. All of this is just a possibility. It's not absolute. Ning Fan's eyes were now completely clear. He understood the key to refining the death god crystal. He already understood why this death god heart could help people open the heart aperture. Killing 10,000 ancient gods and extracting their hearts was not as simple as extracting their heart force. Instead, one had to kill these ancient gods using incomparably cruel methods, causing their hearts to be filled with all kinds of negative emotions before they died. The stronger the divine heart of an ancient god was, the less likely it was for them to have negative emotions. However, once negative emotions are produced, those emotions would be even more ingrained and indelible. It would make people unable to extricate themselves and sink deep into the mud. Killing these ancient gods, extracting their hearts, and refining them into crystals, the death god crystal was the amalgamation of countless negative emotions. When a cultivator consumes it to resist the negative emotions within, it could temper their heart and improve the power of their divine heart. If the grade of the death god crystal is too low, it would not have much of an effect. If the grade of the death god crystal is too high and the negative emotions are too strong, the cultivator who consumes the crystal would not be able to resist it. Hence, the refinement process would usually fail. Mu-Tu and the three gods had failed to refine the crystal because they could not resist the negative emotions. As for Sun Luo, it was because even though he was not an ancient god, he had always been obsessed with evil thoughts and had an extremely tough will. What he refined was just a second-grade death god crystal, which was far from enough to open the heart aperture. The grade of the death god crystal that Ning Fan obtained was neither too high nor too low. It was just right for him to use. The power of the gray qi could make him lose himself for a moment, but it was not enough to make him sink completely. It was still within the range of his refinement ability. Standing in the sky, Ning Fan scanned his surroundings with his spirit sense. When he saw the remaining ancient god corpses, his eyes flashed with determination. The negative emotions of 10,001 aperture ancient gods were not enough to help him open the third heart aperture. He needed more gray qi. At the moment when Ning Fan scanned them with his spirit sense, the 81 two-aperture ancient gods moved. These two-aperture ancient gods at the ghost profound realm let out deafening roars. Some of them flew into the sky, while some of them were already in the sky. All of them were closing in on Ning Fan. At a certain moment, the 81 ancient gods suddenly stretched out their palms in unison. The gray qi around their bodies condensed into longbows which were held in their palms. Amidst the thunderous roars, the 81 ancient gods drew their bows and released their arrows. 81 whistling giant arrows made of gray light pierced through the sky towards Ning Fan. Each of the gray arrow light had the destructive power of a ghost profound realm attack. Among the 81 arrows, 6 or 7 of them even had the destructive power of a peak ghost profound realm attack. The arrows fell at the same time. Gray chi covered the sky. This piece of land that was already upside down was once again turned upside down. Before the arrows could get close to him, Ning Fan immediately lifted one of his feet and stepped on the sky. Immediately, a huge ravine with lead-colored light appeared in the sky. Within the ravine, a gigantic lead-colored lotus grew. At the next moment, millions of lotus shadows appeared in the sky. Divine light illuminated the world. The arrows bombarded the defense of the 3 flowers but failed to break it. To be honest, the strength of Ning Fan's 3 flowers technique was not enough to defend against the joint attacks of 81 life immortal realm experts. However, in this illusory realm, Ning Fan's 3 flowers technique seemed to have undergone some changes. The natal lead lotus that he summoned was the human lotus. It was actually born from the countless ravines. It was a humongous object that was as large as a mountain. Unknowingly, the defense of his 3 flowers converging prominence technique had greatly improved. When his first flower was cultivated to the great perfection realm, it was enough to defend against the destructive power of an early truth-crossing realm expert. However, at this moment, under the full defense of this technique, even a mid-truth-crossing realm expert might not be able to destroy or break through the lotus shadows that filled the sky. The power of the 3 flowers converging prominence technique has increased. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with surprise at first. Then he seemed to have understood something. The reason why the technique's power increased might be related to the act of consuming the ancient god heart lotus. The 3 flowers converging prominence was a divine technique of the ancient gods. It was a necessary technique to pluck the ancient god heart lotus. It was not impossible that consuming the ancient god heart lotus could increase the power of the technique. While Ning Fan was surprised by the increase in the power of the 3 flowers technique, all of the ancient gods' corpses revealed a look of terror the moment they saw the lead lotus. The era where these ancient gods fell was too long ago. It was so long ago that the 3 flowers technique had not been created by a powerful ancient god yet. During that era, an ancient god appeared out of nowhere and created the 3 flowers converging prominence technique. This ancient god was cruel by nature. He loved to kill other divine races the most. He used the divine hearts of others to refine the death god crystal. His title was Death Ancestor. The Death Ancestor was the murderer who snatched the hearts of these ancient gods. Even though these ancient gods' corpses had lost their spiritual intelligence, they still instinctively feared the Death Ancestor. That fear was evoked by Ning Fan's 3 flowers technique. Run! The moment they saw the lotus shadows that filled the sky, the 81 2 apertures ancient gods and 6 3 apertures ancient gods turned and fled without exception. Chapter 781. Ning Fan was slightly surprised when he saw the remaining 2 and 3 apertures of the god corpses fleeing without putting up a fight. Millions of lotus shadows coiled around his body. In a flash, he chased after them. In order to open his 3rd heart aperture, he needed the gray chi inside these god corpses. The enemy had 81 life immortal realm experts and 4 Duzhen realm experts. If Ning Fan were to fight them head-on, it would not be easy for him to kill all of them. Now that these god corpses fled without putting up a fight, it couldn't be better for Ning Fan. After chasing after the god corpses, Ning Fan raised his hand and summoned the memory-severing Dao sword, creating large areas of illusory sword formations to block the path of the god corpses. Those 2 orifices god corpses with weak cultivation bases died under Ning Fan's illusory sword formations one after another. In those layers of illusions, they saw their own memories when they were still alive. Happy, sad, fearful. In the end they died in the illusions. The 2 orifices god corpses were killed by the sword shadows one after another. Traces of gray chi went into Ning Fan's body. These 2 orifices god corpses were in a panic. They did not defend themselves against Ning Fan's attacks at all. They just instinctively ran for their lives, afraid of the lotus shadows around Ning Fan. Even the peak ghost profound realm 2 orifices god corpses gradually died in Ningfan's hands. Only 4 orifices god corpses with different appearances were still running for their lives. After killing 81 2 orifices god corpses, 81 traces of gray qi appeared in Ningfan's body. These gray qi were condensed from the negative emotions of 2 orifices ancient gods. A single trace of gray qi was equivalent to hundreds of traces of 1 orifice ancient god's gray qi. When the gray qi entered his heart, Ningfan felt a sharp pain. His traveling light immediately became stagnant, and he almost fell off the clouds. Countless layers of illusions appeared in front of his eyes. In these illusions, there was a giant in black robes who was holding a sickle. He was cruelly slaughtering the ancient gods one after another, seizing their hearts and refining them into the death god crystal. This giant in black robes was surrounded by countless lotus shadows of 3 colors. He was called the death ancestor by the ancient gods. The aura of this giant in black robes was terrifyingly strong. Even though it was not as strong as immortal sovereign Zido, it was much stronger than immortal emperor Mo Zhong whom Ningfan had met before. The death ancestor. He is the one who refined the death god crystal. Ningfan's expression changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and activated his heart force. Divine light shone around his body, dispelling the illusions one after another. His eyes regained their clarity. After stabilizing his qi, Ningfan used the Black Devil escape art continuously in a flash of light, and continued his pursuit. After absorbing the gray qi of 81 2 apertures ancient gods, Ningfan had already opened up half of his 3rd heart orifice. Ningfan knew that as long as he could kill the 4 3 apertures ancient gods in front of him, and seize the gray qi in their bodies, he would have a chance to open up his 3rd heart orifice. Sensing that Ningfan was still chasing after them, the 4 god corpses suddenly changed their escaping light, and fled in 4 different directions. Ningfan's eyes turned slightly serious. Then he identified one of them and chased after him. He was chasing the tiger-headed god corpse with the weakest aura among the 4 god corpses. It was obvious that this tiger-headed god's corpse cultivated a godly cultivation method with the body of a monster. Because his monster cultivation method hadn't completely dissipated, the tiger head didn't disappear. His divine path cultivation method was not pure, so he was the weakest of the 4 corpses. Although he was at the early stage of the crossing truth realm, his strength was about the same as Sun Yan. Seeing that Ningfan was chasing after him, the tiger-headed divine corpse's expression was filled with terror, and he fled even faster. Ningfan's eyes turned grim. He continuously used the Black Devil escape for more than 10 times and forcefully arrived in front of the tiger-headed divine corpse. Then he pointed a sword ray at his finger and split the void space apart, blocking the divine corpse's escape light. At the moment he blocked the tiger-headed divine corpse, Ningfan summoned his true body's Tao image without saying a word. The day suddenly turned into night, and the sky was filled with 7 stars. The black and white heaven-holding imprint instantly condensed in his palm. Without any hesitation, he directly slammed it at the tiger-headed divine corpse. A palm imprint that blotted out the sky descended. The tiger-headed divine corpse's expression changed drastically. With a sway of his body, he created 1 million illusory figures which collided with the gigantic palm imprint. This was a divine ability that used the illusory figures as a human wall for defense. The 1 million illusory figures were destroyed by the palm imprint one after another, reducing the power of the heaven-holding imprint by 50%. The remaining palm imprint continued to fall from the sky. As for the tiger-headed divine corpse, he did not have much magic power left after using the illusory body defense technique. Under the threat of danger, the tiger-headed divine corpse's body swayed and disappeared from his original spot. In an instant, he appeared 1 million li away. That palm imprint also disappeared in a flash. In the blink of an eye, it appeared 1 million li away from the head of the tiger-headed divine corpse. The edge of the heaven-holding imprint faintly glowed with a faint purple-golden light. The tiger-headed divine corpse did not expect that he would not be able to avoid the palm imprint. He let out a miserable shriek and was struck by the palm imprint. Then he fell from the sky with severe injuries. On the ground, large patches of black flames had already appeared unknowingly. As soon as the tiger-headed divine corpse fell to the ground, it was immediately engulfed in the sea of flames. It let out an earth-shattering shriek. Ning Fan followed closely behind it. He descended slightly and changed his hand seal. The black flames immediately condensed into a gigantic black cauldron, trapping the tiger-headed divine corpse in it and burning it desperately. Gradually, the cries of the tiger-headed divine corpse stopped. With a loud bang, the body of the tiger-headed divine corpse in the cauldron collapsed and turned into countless traces of gray qi. Ning Fan opened his mouth and swallowed all of the gray qi into his body. Then he retracted the black flames and sat cross-legged on the ground to refine the gray qi. His third heart acupoint had been slightly opened. Ning Fan could clearly feel that the recovery speed of his magic power was getting faster and faster. The heart of an ancient god could not only increase the cultivation level of an ancient god by a few times or even tens of times, but it could also help an ancient god recover their magic power quickly. Currently, Ning Fan was close to opening his third heart acupoint. The recovery speed of his magic power was almost comparable to the recovery speed when he consumed pills in the past. Ning Fan had consumed a lot of his magic power to kill the tiger-headed divine corpse. After his magic power had recovered to its peak state, he used the rain technique in this illusory world and began to search for the whereabouts of the other 3 divine corpses. Ning Fan stood still in the drizzle for a long time and found out the location of the 3 divine corpses. The dragon-horn divine corpse was hiding in a barren forest. The flaming-winged divine corpse was hiding in the crater of a volcano. The tortoise-shelled divine corpse was hiding in a huge swamp. After pondering for a moment, Ning Fan flew towards the huge swamp where the tortoise-shelled divine corpse was hiding. 10 days later, Ning Fan left the huge swamp and headed towards the direction of the flaming-winged divine corpse. 1 month later, Ning Fan walked out of the barren forest where the dragon-horn divine corpse was hiding. Another month later, Ning Fan successfully killed the dragon-horn divine corpse. These divine corpses with 3 orifices were not weak. All of them had a cultivation base comparable to the early crossing truth realm. However, they had already grown fearful of Ning Fan, which greatly reduced their combat power. Therefore, it was not difficult for them to divide and conquer them. The 4 divine corpses were killed by Ning Fan one after another. The illusory realm was then destroyed. On the 7-pointed star sacrificial altar, Ning Fan was as still as a mountain. His third heart orifice was about to open. At this moment, a vortex seemed to have formed in his heart. Traces of magic power were being produced from that vortex. That vortex was called the heart origin. It was the source of the ancient god's heart. Only 3 orifices ancient gods could open their heart origin. Once they opened their heart origin, their magic power would be doubled. The magic power of second-step cultivators would flow through their immortal veins and be stored in their primordial spirit in their dantian. To 3 orifices ancient gods, the divine heart that had opened its heart origin was equivalent to another container for magic power. It could contain the same amount of magic power as the primordial spirit. The third heart orifice was opening and stabilizing bit by bit. The heart origin was constantly producing magic power. The bottleneck of the mid-ghost profound realm was also breaking through bit by bit. The 3 deities were watching Ning Fan from the side. The astonishment in their eyes became more and more obvious. They could clearly feel that the ancient god Qi on Ning Fan's body had almost reached the 3rd aperture realm. It was extremely powerful. It was not something that they who had just opened their half-aperture realm could contend against. This young man has succeeded in refining his crystal. Not long after he opened the 2nd heart orifice, he actually opened the 3rd heart orifice. The 3 deities muttered to themselves in disbelief. He had heard from his master that it was not easy to open the 3rd heart orifice even in the era of the ancient gods. To the ancient gods, the 1st heart orifice was just considered as the entry point. The 2nd heart orifice was just considered as the foundation building. The 3rd heart orifice was extremely difficult to open. That was why he was not that shocked when he saw Ning Fan opening the 2nd heart orifice. However, when he saw Ning Fan opening the 3rd heart orifice, he could not help but feel astonished. A 3 orifices ancient god with 8 times the speed of magic power increase. With the help of 3 heart orifices, Ningfan's future was naturally limitless. Bang! Suddenly, a loud sound came from Ningfan's body, startling the three deities. Large patches of divine light emerged from Ningfan's body. Ningfan sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes without saying a word. He looked like an ancient god. At this moment, Ningfan's third heart orifice was completely opened. His cultivation base had finally broken through to the mid-ghost profound realm. The upper limit of Ningfan's magic power was already higher than ordinary people. After breaking through to the mid-ghost profound realm, the amount of magic power in his primordial spirit was comparable to that of a peak ghost profound realm cultivator. Now that he had opened the heart origin, Ningfan's magic power had doubled. The total amount of magic power in his body was not any weaker than Sun Yan's in the past. Even though his cultivation base had yet to reach the true crossing realm, his magic power had already reached the true crossing realm. In the illusory realm of his mind, Ningfan had spent several months to kill all the divine corpses. However, in the outside world, only the time it takes for an incense stick to burn had passed. After withdrawing the divine light around his body and opening his eyes, Ningfan stood up. When he sensed the vastness of his magic power, he could not help but nod in satisfaction. Currently he was already a three orifices ancient god, a mid-ghost profound realm cultivator. His magic power was comparable to an ordinary true crossing realm cultivator. This trip to the quicksand star region was not in vain. The opportunities he had were indeed great. Of course, there were also many dangers. Ningfan's eyes turned solemn. He did not forget that he was currently following behind Sun Luo and accompanying him in his madness. Sun Luo was a madman. Although there were many opportunities following behind him, there were also many dangers. A moment of carelessness just now had caused his ancient devil puppet to be severely damaged. If he were to be careless again, he might even lose his life. Oh? You've opened the third heart orifice? Very good. If that's the case, it's enough for me to have you as the vessel for my ancient god power. I don't need these three inferior vessels anymore. Suddenly, a cold voice resounded on the seven-pointed star altar. It was Sun Luo's voice. At the same time, the remaining ancient god power on the seven-pointed star altar flowed into Ningfan's divine heart. As for the ancient god power that was originally stored in the bodies of the three divine beings, it was also transferred to Ningfan's body. Sun Luo's body contained half of the quicksand ancestor's divine power, while Ningfan also contained half of it. Sun Luo relied on his cultivation base, while Ningfan relied on his ancient god heart orifice. When the ancient god power flowed into his divine heart, Ningfan did not resist. Since he had promised to be Sun Luo's vessel for his divine power, he would not go back on his words. He only hoped that Sun Luo would fulfill his promise and cure the little demoness of her poison. The scenery in front of him suddenly changed. Ningfan could feel a powerful divine ability that was moving him to another place. After a few breaths, Ningfan left the seven-pointed star altar and appeared in a world filled with twinkling starlight. This place is... Ningfan's eyes turned cold. He had some guesses but also some disbelief. This is my divine star space. The star you are on is the ninth star in my glabella. You can see the scenery of the outside world from here. If necessary, you can even help me in a battle. You can make fireworks for me here. Of course, you can also comprehend my Tao of Void here. Sun Luo's cold voice resounded in Ningfan's ears, confirming his guess. This place was indeed Sun Luo's divine star space. Moreover, it was where Sun Luo's strongest star was located, the ninth star. This place was filled with Sun Luo's divine ability and Tao power. In this place, Ningfan could feel the Tao of Void in Sun Luo's ninth star without any reservations. However, Ningfan could not believe that Sun Luo would actually keep him in his divine star space without any worries. Divine star, demon star and devil star. Ningfan had already stopped cultivating them a long time ago. To cultivators of the divine Tao, cultivating divine stars was the best way to increase their strength. The divine star was located in the glabella of a profound cultivator. Normally, only profound cultivators at the nascent soul realm could cultivate the first divine star. At the divine transformation realm, they could cultivate the second, the Void Refinement Realm, the third, and the Void Fragmentation Realm. At the Extreme Life Immortal Realm, they could cultivate the fifth Divine Star. At the Duzhen Realm, Shikong Realm, and Broken Thought Realm, they could cultivate the sixth, seventh, and eighth Divine Stars respectively. Only at the Eternal Ancient Realm could they cultivate the ninth Divine Star. Divine Stars could nurture divine abilities. Many profound cultivators' trump cards required Divine Stars to perform their techniques. Ningfan's knowledge was vast and varied. He did not cultivate many Divine Stars. As for Sun Luo, he cultivated them step by step. The ninth star was condensed after Sun Luo's immemorial time. The divine ability it contained was Sun Luo's star burial technique. Ningfan stood on the ninth star of Sun Luo. Countless light balls that were engraved with flowing shadows were floating in the air. Ningfan casually summoned a light ball and held it in his hand. Then he spread his spirit sense into the light ball and read the information in it. These light balls contain the entire process of Sun Luo Immortal King's cultivation of the star burial technique. They also contained his comprehension towards the Tao of the Void. Ningfan would definitely obtain great benefits from browsing through these light balls. He could not believe that Sun Luo, who was cold and indifferent, would give him such a great opportunity to comprehend the Tao of the Void for no reason. Not far away from him stood an oval blood-red star door. Once he stepped through this door, he would be able to leave this starry space and return to the outside world to regain his freedom. Through this door, he could see everything that was happening in the outside world. Ningfan's vigilance gradually rose. He had a feeling that Sun Luo had an ulterior motive for doing this. Just as you expected, I didn't give this ninth star to you for nothing. I want to use this Tao comprehension to exchange for one of your divine abilities. Sun Luo's voice resounded again. Exchange for my divine ability? Ningfan was surprised. That's right. I want to use my comprehension here to exchange for your Spirit Blast technique. Spirit Blast technique? Ningfan was stunned. After remaining silent for a while, he suddenly patted his storage pouch and took out a jade slip. Then he engraved the Spirit Blast technique into it. Just as the jade slip was engraved, blood-red starlight flashed and the jade slip vanished into thin air. Sun Luo had taken it away. In the void outside, Sun Luo was browsing through the jade slip in his hand while traveling across star regions. After a long time, he nodded with satisfaction and said, "Not a bad divine ability. As long as there are enough primordial spirits of cultivators, even the Divine Void Emperor and the Divine Void Emperor would find it hard to resist this technique. I didn't expect that when I was imprisoned in the heavenly prison, there was actually a junior in the Eastern Heaven who had created such a mysterious divine ability." Bang! Having comprehended the essence of this technique, Sun Luo crushed the jade slip in his hand. His eyes flashed with a cold light. Suddenly, he stopped outside a star region where the cold wind was blowing. It was an imperial star region in the Eastern Heaven Immortal World called the Nine Nether Star Region. The strongest force in this star region was the Nine Nether Sect. Behind the Nine Nether Sect was a Sixth Tribulation Immortal Emperor, Great Sovereign Nine Nether. Currently, Ningfan was hiding in Sun Luo's ninth star. Through the star door not far away, he could clearly see the Nine Nether Star region in the outside world. The location of the Nine Nether Star region was completely different from the Eastern Sea Star region, where the Godly Void Pavilion was located. Ningfan recognized the Nine Nether Star region. His eyes could not help but reveal a hint of confusion. It seems like this Sun Luo Immortal King isn't in a hurry to go to the Eastern Sea Star region. He actually changed his route and came to this Nine Nether Star region. I wonder what is his purpose for coming here. Ningfan shook his head. He released the little demoness from the Yuan Yao world and placed her flat on the ground. Seeing that the little demoness was still sleeping peacefully and the remaining poison in her body had yet to be cured, Ningfan could not help but sigh. Then he sat down cross-legged on the ground again and took out a lot of materials to make fireworks in the mortal world. He did not forget that Sun Luo also gave him another task, which was to make fireworks. His hands did not stop making fireworks. His eyes, however, were fixed outside the star door, observing Sun Luo's every move. He saw Sun Luo standing outside the Nine Nether Star region for a long time. At first, his eyes were filled with nostalgia. In the end, his gaze became colder and colder. All of a sudden, he raised his hand and pressed one of his fingers at the 9 nether star region. As soon as he pressed his finger, the grand formation of the entire 9 nether star region shattered. The sound of it collapsing shocked all the second step cultivators in the entire star region. On the 9 nether star, at the bottom of an icy abyss, an old man wearing a purple python robe suddenly opened his silver pupils. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he exclaimed, "It's Sun Luo. He's actually not dead yet." Without any hesitation, the purple-robed old man suddenly rose to his feet. His body swayed and covered the sky with divine light. In an instant, he disappeared from the icy abyss and reappeared in the vast starry sky. This person stood in the starry sky, causing the galaxies to tremble. Suddenly, an incomparably gigantic golden shadow appeared behind him. It was the shadow of an emperor. This person was the emperor of the 9 nether star region, the 9 nether great emperor. However, the eyes of the 9 nether great emperor, who was supposed to be high and mighty, were filled with incomparable solemnity and fear. He stared at the blood-haired man in the void space in front of him, as if he was facing a formidable enemy. "Luojiu, in the past, you followed Emperor Shen's space and ambushed me with a finger. Today I will return the favor." The corner of Sun Luo's mouth curved into a cold smile. He suddenly raised his hand and pressed his finger down at the 9 nether great emperor. This finger contained the monstrous devil intent of the Sun Luo immortal king. It was as if he wanted to refine everything in front of him into that finger of darkness. The moment the Sun Luo immortal king displayed this technique, a gigantic shadow of a black sun suddenly appeared behind him. It emitted an evil black light. At the moment the Sun Luo immortal king raised his finger, the 9 nether great emperor's face suddenly turned pale. This is the dark obsidian finger. The emperor technique of the dark race that is not passed down to others. Only a few immortal emperors of the dark race can learn it. How did you obtain this technique? Could it be that you are so audacious as to kill an immortal emperor of the dark race and snatch this technique? You're a madman. How dare you touch a member of the 10 great secret races? Before his voice died away, the 9 nether great emperor turned around and tried to flee. Even though he was a 6th tribulation immortal emperor, whose cultivation realm was higher than Sun Luo, who was a 5 tribulation immortal king, he knew how strong Sun Luo was and how vicious the dark obsidian finger was. Sun Luo's finger was definitely enough to severely injure him. Dark race. Emperor technique. Dark obsidian finger. On the 9th star, Ning Fan witnessed everything that was happening in the outside world. His heart was in turmoil. It was his first time hearing about the 10 great secret races. It turned out that there was a race called the Dark Race among the 10 great secret races. It was his first time seeing Sun Luo display the dark obsidian finger. He felt that this ability was extremely evil, and its power was even more terrifying. Ning Fan could not help but raise his hand and imitate the Tao essence of Sun Luo's dark obsidian finger. However, he could not replicate the essence of that finger no matter how hard he tried. In the outside world, when Sun Luo saw the 9 nether great emperor turning around to flee, he let out a disdainful snort. Then he pressed his finger even faster. "You can't escape." Chapter 782. You can't escape. Sun Luo let out a cold snort and pressed his finger even faster. The giant black sun behind him shattered into countless black flames that turned into countless black fire crows. The fire crows all gathered together and let out ominous cries. They formed a giant finger that was even larger than a low-rank star system. It was filled with evil energy and pressed down toward 9 nether emperor. The finger was covered in black flames. The black flames weren't real flames, but formed by the power of extreme darkness. The dark aura that came from the giant finger quickly spread to the dozens of planets. The creatures on those planets immediately melted into black blood. In the end, even those cultivation planets collapsed. The thousands of cultivation planets in the distance were affected by the evil aura. Their spiritual energy became polluted, and the cultivators' cultivation levels began to drop. At this moment, Countless cultivators in the Nine Nether Star System revealed expressions of fear. They could feel that a peerless powerhouse was using a destructive spell in the Nine Nether Star System. All the ice in the Nine Nether Star System melted into black water at this moment. Endless black gas came from the giant finger and swept toward Nine Nether Emperor. The Ninth Underworld Emperor was greatly shocked. He knew how terrifying and vicious the luminous finger was. It was capable of harming one's cultivation and ruining one's Tao, and it wasn't something he could go against. If he were to suffer this finger, then his cultivation would definitely suffer a great loss, so it was best to avoid this finger. He waved his hand and tore open a silver ice door before him. He stepped inside and disappeared without a trace. The giant finger trembled and shattered countless cracks in the void before disappearing without a trace. A moment later, the entire Nine Nether Star System began to tremble violently. Following that, countless spatial cracks exploded in the starry sky, and countless icy ravines extended wildly in the starry sky. In the end, there was a loud bang and a silver ice door appeared out of nowhere. As soon as the silver ice gate appeared, it immediately exploded into countless ice shards. A purple-robed old man in ragged clothes fell out with a black aura covering his face. His complexion was extremely weak. Not only was his cultivation greatly damaged, almost falling from the Emperor realm, even one of his arms had been strangely cut off from the crook of his arm. Black blood flowed out from the cut. The Ninth Nether Great Sovereign, the sixth tribulation of all eternity, was actually severely injured by a single finger of the Sun Luo Immortal King. Ningfan's face was filled with astonishment as he witnessed everything in front of him from the ninth star. Senluo's strength was still beyond Ningfan's estimation. The Netherworld Great Emperor, a sixth tribulation immortal emperor, was no match for Senluo. The Nine Nether Emperor's face was ashen as he coughed. He looked at Senluo with deep fear in his eyes. After that fear, there was also a hint of viciousness. There were too many grievances between him and Senluo, so it was unlikely for them to be on good terms. A battle was unavoidable. With a resolute look in his eyes, he placed his remaining hand on his storage bag and took out a huge silver-colored dragon skeleton. He raised it into the air. It was the dragon skeleton of a demon dragon that had fallen countless years ago. Judging from the chi of this dragon skeleton, this dragon's cultivation base was at least at the sixth tribulation realm. The Nine Nether Emperor's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. He wanted to use this dragon skeleton to summon the remnant soul of this demon dragon and join forces with it to fight against Senluo. He changed his hand seal, and the dragon skeleton began to move with a cracking sound, emitting a frosty dragon's breath. Two balls of silver flame suddenly flashed in his empty eye sockets. He glared at Senluo fiercely and suddenly let out a dragon roar that shocked the entire star region. As soon as the dragon roar was heard, a huge sea of rainbow-colored lightning immediately appeared in the starry sky. Countless rainbow-colored lightning zigzagged like snakes and struck at Senluo with thunderous roars. The remains of a flowing dragon, When Qianyu was still alive, she had once praised the holiness and beauty of the flowing dragon. The flowing dragon was the most beautiful type of dragon among the demons of the dragon clan. I didn't expect that it was just an ugly skeleton after its death. Senluo's usual cold eyes flashed with nostalgia again. Then, his lips curled into a disdainful smile. He looked at the sea of lightning in the sky and didn't run or avoid it. He raised his hand and a small axe immediately appeared in his hand. The entire axe was transparent, as if it was carved from a blood-colored crystal. There was a poem carved on the small axe. The words were rough and wild. It was Senluo's handwriting, but the poem was graceful and elegant. It was definitely not something that Senluo could write. The first flower is good, don't teach me to hate Xiao Xiao. The second full moon, don't teach me to let down Chanwan. The best is for a good family to be happy together. This life and this night, Chang'an. It was a poem that was casually recited by a woman. It was carved on Senluo's axe and also in Senluo's heart. However, the Xiao Xiao she was waiting for was not him. However, he couldn't give her Chang'an. The only thing he could do was to make everyone who had let her down pay the price. The blood-colored axe in his hand suddenly became huge. It was as tall as a person, and was firmly held in Senluo's hand. That blood-colored axe was his Tao weapon. The name of the axe was Chang, and at this moment, the reminiscence in Sun Luo's eyes turned into anger and madness. He roared towards the heavens. Chang, if I don't give you 10,000 green leaves, I will make them wither for a lifetime. From now on, eastern sky can forget about having a good time. If I don't give you a bright moon, I will make it forever incomplete. From now on, eastern sky can forget about having a full moon. I will make rivers of blood flow in the divine void realm. I will make sky prison never have peace. I will make eastern sky never have Chang, and Qi. Facing the sea of thunder, Sun Luo's axe chopped down. The axe light flashed and the boundless blood-colored flames immediately spread out along with the axe light like a swimming dragon, swallowing up the sea of thunder. The first axe strike destroyed the sea of thunder. Sun Luo raised his hand and raised the axe again. Without any hesitation, he chopped down at the broken bone of the flowing dragon. With the second axe strike, the empty starry sky was immediately split in two by the blood-colored axe light. Large swathes of the starry sky collapsed. The broken bone of the flowing dragon was struck by the axe light. It immediately let out a heaven-shaking scream. Within the blood-colored light, it shattered into countless pieces of bone powder. Ninth Nether Emperor was shocked. He never thought that Sun Luo would take out the Chang, an axe against him. He and Sun Luo had been friends for countless years, so he had a good understanding of Sun Luo's various supernatural powers. Chang and axe, Chang and axe. Ninth Nether Emperor understood Sun Luo. He knew that if he took out this axe, he must be determined to kill the enemy. The Chang, an axe, was a ferocious Dao weapon. Every attack needed to consume Sun Luo's blood essence in order to display 100% of its power. And once it was taken out, it would be difficult to put it back into one's body without killing the enemy and drinking the enemy's blood. Back then, this old man only sneak attacked him once, and he actually wants to kill this old man? Ninth Nether Emperor was shocked. Seeing Sun Luo raise the axe again and chopping down in his direction for the third time, Ninth Nether Emperor gritted his teeth. His figure flashed and turned into millions of silver flowing lights that fled in millions of directions. These millions of flowing lights were his unique escape technique. Logically speaking, only one of them was his real body. At this moment, Ninth Nether Emperor was heavily injured by the luminous finger, and his cultivation was greatly damaged. He wasn't a match for Sun Luo in the first place, and he was even less of a match for Sun Luo now. Moreover, when he saw Sun Luo take out the Chang and axe, he naturally didn't dare to face it head-on. Sun Luo sneered without end as he looked at Ninth Nether Emperor, who was escaping by trick. He didn't stop the millions of flowing lights from fleeing, and the light of the axe slanted and chopped down towards an empty place. As the axe chopped down, the river of stars instantly collapsed, and an extremely sorry figure fell out from the cracks. Shockingly, it was Ninth Nether Emperor. Ninth Nether Emperor didn't hide in the flowing light at all. Instead, he slyly hid here, and prepared to stay here to watch. If there was a chance, he would wait for an opportunity to sneak attack Sun Luo. Those millions of flowing lights were just a distraction. Even though this person's idea was good, he was unfortunately seen through by Sun Luo, and he immediately coughed up blood and retreated in the starry sky. After he stabilized his figure with great difficulty, there wasn't a single piece of uninjured flesh on his body, and he was covered in wounds left by the bloody axe light. Sun Luo, in any case, I've known you for many years. In the past, I was just blinded by greed and sneakily attacked you with one finger. Do you really want to fight to the death with me? Ninth Nether Emperor roared furiously. Luo Jiao, you've injured my finger. Considering our past friendship, I'll only return you one finger and let it go. However, you shouldn't have drunk that bowl of primordial spirit wine. Since you've betrayed me, I'll cut off all ties with you. Since you've injured Qianyu, I'll turn you into ashes. Heaven sealing technique. Sun Luo was so angry that he laughed. He suddenly raised his hand and pointed a finger at Ninth Nether Emperor. Countless black lines in the void immediately fixed Ninth Nether Emperor in the starry sky. Ning Fan's eyes were filled with surprise. He never expected that Sun Luo would actually know how to use the heaven sealing technique. When he took a closer look, He realized that the heaven-sealing technique was just a pseudo-divine ability that Sun Luo imitated. It wasn't the real heaven-sealing technique. Only then did his astonishment lessen. Being fixed in the starry sky by Sun Luo, the ninth Nether Emperor had nowhere to run or hide. He couldn't even move or resist. He was greatly shocked. Impossible. What you've just used is obviously not the real heaven-sealing technique. How can it actually stop me? Humph. So what if it's not the orthodox technique? Chi. Sun Luo let out a cold snort. He pinned ninth Nether Emperor with one of his fingers while holding the axe in his other hand. 1 axe, 2 axes, 3 axes, 10 axes, 100 axes, 1,000 axes. One after another, the axes that shook the entire galaxy landed on ninth Nether Emperor's body, constantly creating destructive waves. Ninth Nether Emperor's injuries became more and more severe. His physical body gradually collapsed, leaving only his golden primordial spirit. The reason why his primordial spirit was golden was because it was protected by his Emperor Qi. Even though the axes were powerful and kept severely injuring and weakening the power of ninth Nether Emperor's primordial spirit, it still couldn't completely destroy this golden primordial spirit. Witnessing this scene, Ning Fan was deeply shocked. He had once read from an ancient book that immortal emperors who had emperor shadows could rely on their Emperor Qi to protect their primordial spirit. They were indestructible and difficult to kill. Even though ninth Nether Emperor was no match for Sun Luo, it was also difficult for Sun Luo to kill him. Not to mention Sun Luo, even the 2 emperors of the 8th Tribulation of Eternity, the Divine and Void Emperors could not easily destroy an immortal emperor's primordial spirit. Sun Luo, even though you are strong, you still can't kill me. I advise you to quickly let me go. Otherwise, ninth Nether Emperor's golden primordial spirit sneered. Just as he was about to threaten him, his expression changed abruptly at the next moment. Luo Jiao, do you really think I can't kill you? The corner of Sun Luo's mouth curved into a mocking smile. He suddenly kept his axe back into his body. Then he raised his hand and made a grabbing motion in the direction of ninth Nether Emperor. This grab contained the power of the void which Sun Luo was famous for, and the power of time which he obtained from the flowing sand primogenitor. When the power of time and the power of the void intersected, time and space seemed to have frozen at this moment. The Tao of life and death, the Tao of true void and the Tao of time and space. After that it was samsara. Along the way, Sun Luo had comprehended life and death in the first step of cultivation. In the second step of cultivation, he comprehended the true void, comprehended the power of space and obtained the power of time. At this moment, his hand was actually surrounded by a genuine power of samsara. Unlike the power of samsara which Ning Fan had just obtained, this power of samsara was powerful and terrifying. It was enough to wipe out ninth Nether Emperor's primordial spirit. Therefore, ninth Nether Emperor really began to feel fear. Samsara. Power of samsara. This is the legendary power that only saints at the 3rd step of Tao cultivation can master. How can you display it? Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Ninth Nether Emperor roared in shock and fear. You don't need to know. Destroy. Sun Luo clenched his fist fiercely. 5 rays of samsara finger light immediately turned into claw shadows, tearing the starry sky and shredding ninth Nether Emperor's primordial spirit with ease. On this day in the Eastern Heaven Immortal World, a great emperor whose name shook the entire galaxy fell in Sun Luo's hands. However, ninth Nether Emperor was not the only great emperor who fell in the chaos of Eastern Heaven this time. After killing ninth Nether Emperor, Sun Luo stood in the 9 Nether Star region for a long time. However, he did not start a massacre in this star region. He raised his hand and sucked the fragments of ninth Nether Emperor's golden primordial spirit into his hand. After studying them carefully, he shook his head and said, "Even though the Spirit Blast technique is amazing, it can't use the primordial spirit of immortal emperors as a catalyst. Even though this technique is powerful, it still has its limits. Luo Jiao, even though you have betrayed me and even hurt Qinyu, your brother has died in order to save me. Regarding the grudge between you and me, I will only kill you alone. I won't implicate your clansmen. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Luo swallowed those primordial spirit fragments and suddenly turned around, flying in another direction. It was a rampage, a complete rampage. After traveling in the starry sky for an unknown period of time, Sun Luo stopped at another star region. Imperial Star Region, Zhenyuan Star Region. Outside this star region, a grand formation had already been set up and countless experts were guarding it. At the center of those experts stood a white-browed child. He was dressed in a Taoist robe, and his aura force was terrifying. He was actually another immortal emperor, who had passed the sixth tribulation. I heard that you killed ninth nether emperor. Is that true? The white-browed child snorted coldly and asked Sun Luo angrily. Obviously, he had already obtained all kinds of information about Sun Luo. However, deep down he still did not believe it. Sun Luo sneered. He did not answer him directly. Instead, he raised one of his hands and swiped across the void space. Layers of cold qi immediately appeared in the void space. Within the cold qi, an extremely cold silver sword floated in front of Sun Luo. This sword was not a precious Tao weapon, but a manifestation of a divine ability. This technique was one of Ninth Nether Emperor's trump cards, the Dark Ice Sword. Unfortunately, before Sun Luo, the Ninth Hell Emperor didn't even have the chance to execute this technique before perishing with hatred in his heart. Ning Fan's eyes became more and more solemn as he observed the sword in the ninth star sphere. He felt that this sword was extremely cold. A single strike from it was enough to freeze an entire mid-grade star region. However, he did not know that this technique was Ninth Nether Emperor's divine ability. The white-browed child, on the other hand, knew about this technique. As soon as he saw Sun Luo display Ninth Nether Emperor's divine ability, he immediately revealed an extremely shocked expression. You really killed Ninth Nether Emperor, and devoured his primordial spirit with the Tao seizing from the void technique, and seize his divine ability and secret technique. Impossible. You're just an immortal king. How could you destroy an immortal emperor's primordial spirit? What answered the white-browed child was rays of cold sword light. Without saying anything, Sun Luo directly held the dark ice sword and pointed it at the Zhenyuan star region. All of a sudden, the Zhenyuan star region began to freeze. Countless cultivators who were guarding outside the star region were directly frozen to death. In the 9 Nether Star region, Sun Luo still gave some face to the cultivators of the star region, because he was 9th Nether Emperor's elder brother. However, in this place, he did not need to show any mercy to anyone. Hand over the 12 heaven-piercing arrows and I can spare your life. Otherwise die. Sun Luo stared at the white-browed child coldly. The white-browed child's name was Great Emperor Zhenyuan. He was one of the 16 emperors of Eastern Heaven who guarded the Zhenyuan star region. Chapter 783. Did you come here to snatch the sky-piercing arrow? The white-browed boy gradually put away his surprise and sneered disdainfully. With a fierce flick of his sleeve, the sword light and frost that had been spreading through the starry sky were collected. He raised his hand again, and a black and blue array diagram appeared. In the next instant, thousands of immortal cultivators immediately surrounded Sun Luo with array flags in hand. The immortals waved the array flags and immediately triggered the power of the starry sky to set up another boundless array diagram. A tree grew out of the diagram, and the tree turned into thousands of strands of blue light that trapped Sun Luo inside the array light. Green wisteria with barbs grew out of the array light continuously, and swept toward Sun Luo. This array light was no weaker than the black prison barrier that Sun Luo had used to imprison the divine void emperors. Mysterious pine 8 array diagram. Sun Luo frowned slightly and then snorted coldly. He dispersed the dark ice sword divine ability, and boundless blood flames appeared around him to burn the green wisteria that tried to get close to him. His red hair danced wildly. Killing Emperor Jiuyo was an old grudge. He didn't have any old grudges with Emperor Zhenyuan, but he had heard that the sky-piercing arrow was extremely sharp and could break congenital treasures and the defense of an immortal emperor, which might help his plan. Sun Luo knew that Emperor Zhenyuan was proficient in a primordial spirit life-saving secret technique. Given his strength, it wouldn't be hard for him to defeat Zhenyuan. but killing him would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The sky-piercing arrow was a supreme treasure that Emperor Jin Yuan had refined for many years, so he naturally wouldn't give it to Sun Luo for nothing. Sun Luo understood that if he didn't beat Jin Yuan into fear today, the other party wouldn't obediently hand over the sky-piercing arrow. With a flip of his hand, a blood-colored ring suddenly appeared in Sun Luo's hand. This was a medium-sized domain treasure called the Fiend Ring, which contained a fiend domain. It was covered in seals, and some kind of vicious creature was sealed inside. Fiend domain open. With a cold shout, the ring on Sun Luo's finger immediately emitted a faint blood light, and a giant flaming blood gate appeared out of thin air in the starry sky in front of him. The giant gate was only a third of the way open when it suddenly shattered, as if it had been hit by a fierce attack. In the next instant, a black-scaled behemoth with 4 short legs, a huge head, and a purple horn on its head suddenly rushed out of the giant door and appeared in the starry sky. As soon as the beast appeared, it revealed a ferocious glint in its eyes. It swept its surroundings and let out a world-shaking roar. Its aura was comparable to that of a 3-tribulation celestial king. It raised its purple horn and charged furiously at Sun Luo. The sharpness of its purple horn was probably something even some Khanate treasures couldn't compare to. Although it was only a 3rd tribulation celestial king, if its horn collided with a 4th tribulation or 5th tribulation celestial king, it would be enough to injure them. Sun Luo sighed when he saw the violet-horned, ink-scaled colossal beast roaring furiously as it charged towards him, but he didn't dodge. He just raised his hand and slapped it towards the ink-scaled colossal beast, forcefully stopping its charge, and feigned indifference as he spoke. You were originally the Shao clan's guardian demonic beast. Back then, I slaughtered the entire Shao clan and forcefully subdued you. It's only natural that you hate me. You attacked me several times, but I didn't pursue the matter because in the entire Shao clan, you were the only one who treated Qin Yu well. Today, I came to this star domain to seize the sky-piercing arrow, unseal Qin Yu's remnant soul, and fulfill her last wish. Are you willing to help me seize the sky-piercing arrow? After saying this, Sun Luo didn't say anything else. As he casually broke the array light attack in the 8 formation diagram, he looked quietly at the ink-scaled beast. When the vicious beast, which had been roaring furiously, heard Sun Luo's words, the ferocious light in its eyes froze and gradually disappeared. She most likely wants to see you. Are you going to Sky Prison with me to see her? Sun Luo asked again. Roar. The ink-scaled beast roared, and its eyes were suddenly filled with even more intense fury than before. This fury wasn't directed at Sun Luo. Seeing its expression, Sun Luo knew that the beast had already agreed to help him. Sun Luo nodded in satisfaction, and sent a few more telepathic messages to the ink-scaled colossal beast. His gaze swept over the green array light around them, and a cold light gradually appeared in his eyes as he sneered. Jin Yuan, although your primordial mystic soul separation technique is powerful, you might not be able to escape this beast's pursuit. Since you won't hand over the sky-piercing arrow obediently, don't blame me for being ruthless. Emperor technique, space split. Sun Luo abruptly raised his foot and stomped down on the array diagram under his feet. The air around them instantly twisted violently, and then the space around them started to twist as well. Under the extreme distortion, the momentum was thrown into chaos, and the array light collapsed. Sun Luo's hands tore at the air, and the space that couldn't be touched by his hands was like a thin piece of paper as it was torn apart with a hiss. The void was torn to shreds, and the great array completely collapsed. The power of the black and green array diagram was greatly reduced, and it flew back into the white-browed boy's hands. The thousands of immortal cultivators who had set up the array suffered severe backlash and retreated with serious injuries. This is one of the strongest divine abilities of the Void Scripture. The space split technique? Distorting space, forcefully breaking momentum, and even trapping you in the 8 formation diagram. The white-browed boy's eyes were extremely solemn. He put away the black pine 8 formation diagram and took out a navy blue bronze hammer, which he abruptly raised into the sky. The hammer grew with the wind. Once it rose into the air, it immediately shone with divine light and smashed down at Sun Luo with the power of a Khanate spirit. The fighting hammer. The corners of Sun Luo's eyes narrowed. He abruptly raised his hand and made a grabbing motion with his 5 fingers, and the space twisted once more. The Khanate hammer's attack was immediately reversed, and it smashed toward countless immortal cultivators on the side. Most of these immortal cultivators were life immortals, but there were also some crossing truth immortals. There were very few skulls, and there were only 3 thought-shattering immortals. When the hammer smashed down, hundreds of life immortals were immediately smashed into meat paste and fell into the starry sky. More than 10 crossing truth immortals died, and 2 skulls lost their bodies, leaving only their primordial spirits. Seeing that so many of his own people had been killed by the hammer, the white-browed boy's face turned extremely ugly. He hurriedly raised his hand to put away the treasure hammer, then took out a golden bow with a golden crystal arrow knocked on it, and aimed at Sun Luo. Sun Luo's space-splitting technique could change the attack direction of most magical treasures, but it certainly couldn't change the direction of this arrow. This arrow was one of the 12 heaven-breaking arrows that Sun Luo had been dreaming of. Without any hesitation, the white-browed boy drew the bow and shot the arrow at Sun Luo. However, a golden light flashed, and the arrow disappeared. Before Sun Luo could react, he felt a pain in his chest. The arrow had already pierced through his dantian and his primordial spirit. Even Sun Luo, who had a cold temperament, couldn't help but be slightly surprised at this moment, and the next moment, that surprise turned into passion. Sure enough, with this arrow, the chance of destroying the bell has increased a bit. This seat is taking this arrow. Soul extraction. Sun Luo raised his head and laughed, then raised his hand to grab the entire galaxy. Extract the soul of the earth, the soul of the void, and the soul of the sun, moon, and stars. Sun Luo's soul extraction technique could only extract star souls, but the star souls he extracted were not from a single cultivation planet, but from countless cultivation planets in the entire Zhenyuan star zone. In the entire Eastern Heaven Immortal Realm, there was only one cultivator who could extract the star souls of an entire Imperial Star Zone. After extracting the star souls of the entire Imperial Star Zone, Sun Luo's aura suddenly skyrocketed, and in an instant, his aura reached the realm of the 6th Eternal Tribulation. Before he extracted the soul of the Imperial Star Zone, he could already kill the 9th Nether Heavenly Emperor. Now that he had used a secret technique, his cultivation had reached the 6th Eternal Tribulation, and he could even defeat the 7th Eternal Tribulation cultivators. The white-browed boy in front of him was nothing to be afraid of. Since you don't want to hand over the heaven-breaking arrow, I'll take it by force. Roar. At this moment, Sun Luo raised his head and let out a heaven-shaking roar. The blood-red flame around him spread wildly in the starry sky, turning into a blood-red sea of fire. The blood-red sound circle shook fiercely in all directions. Thousands of immortal cultivators who were struck by the blood-red sound circle trembled, and then they let out shrill cries before exploding into clouds of blood mist and perishing. When the demonic roar entered the white-browed boy's ears, it immediately caused him to feel dizzy and tinnitus. His chi and blood were in chaos, and the demonic will invaded his body. He forcefully activated his secret technique to stabilize his aura. Before the white-browed boy could react, he discovered to his shock that Sun Luo had already vanished without a trace. He did not know where he had gone to. Only the ferocious beast that Sun Luo had summoned was still staring at him coldly in the air. Not good. The white-browed boy immediately felt a sense of danger. Without saying a word, his body shook and scattered into 49 rays of divine light that fled in 49 different directions. The ink-scaled behemoth, which had been motionless like a mountain, suddenly shot out divine light from its eyes and swept toward the 49 rays of divine light formed by the white-browed boy. Every time it swept through a ray of divine light, a scream would come from the ray of divine light. 49 shrill cries rang out, and 49 rays of divine light shattered. The white-browed boy's figure shook, and he reappeared in the starry sky in a sorry state. His face was pale and bloodless, and he seemed to be extremely weak. He glared furiously at the ink-scaled behemoth. Once this old man uses the mysterious origin soul separation technique, I can escape from danger. Even an 8 tribulation celestial emperor can't catch me. I didn't expect this technique to be broken by you, you evil creature. So that's how it is. I didn't expect this old man to be blind and not see that you're a destruction beast that has cultivated the destruction divine light. As the white-browed boy spoke, he clenched his fist and punched toward the void to his left. In that direction, Sun Luo suddenly appeared. Without saying a word, he punched out and collided with the white-browed boy's fist. When the fists collided, Sun Luo didn't retreat even half a step, but the white-browed boy coughed out blood and retreated. Sun Luo looked at the unsteady white-browed boy and sneered. His hands tore the space in front of him, and the space immediately distorted. The white-browed boy felt pain all over his body. The distorted space heavily injured his body again. He angrily stared at Sun Luo, who was approaching step by step. Under that anger, there was finally some fear. He could tell that he couldn't win against Sun Luo. If they fought again, he might die at Sun Luo's hands, just like the 9 Nether Emperor. Forget it. I'll give you 6 heaven-piercing arrows. Let me go. If you force me into a corner, I'll fight you to the death. You won't have an easy time either. The white-browed boy gritted his teeth and said, 12 arrows. If you lose one, don't even think about living today. Sun Luo snorted coldly. You. The white-browed boy glared at Sun Luo. In truth, he still had a life-risking technique that could trade life for life and heavily injure Sun Luo. However, if it was possible, he wouldn't use this life-risking technique. On second thought, even if he lost the heaven-piercing arrows, he could still make more. Although the materials used were all supreme treasures, it was not impossible to make 12 more arrows. If he was killed by Sun Luo for a few heaven-piercing arrows, the loss would outweigh the gain. The white-browed boy gritted his teeth and nodded bitterly. Fine, I can give you all the heaven-piercing arrows, but you have to swear that you will never offend my Jin Yuan star area again. As for how you commit crimes in other eastern sky star areas, I won't ask. I don't have the habit of swearing. But if you give me the heaven-piercing arrows, I promise you that I will never offend your Jin Yuan star area again, Sun Luo said coldly. He waved his hand to undo the space distortion. Well, fine, the white-browed boy sighed. He knew that he couldn't force Sun Luo to swear, but he also knew that Sun Luo would never go back on his words. With a flick of his sleeve, 12 small golden needles with hooks appeared in his hand out of nowhere. If one looked closely, they would find that these 12 small needles were miniature versions of the heaven-piercing arrows. The white-browed boy looked at the thin needles in his hand reluctantly. He raised his hand and threw the 12 golden lights to Sun Luo. Sun Luo took the 12 golden lights with a flick of his sleeve. Without saying a word, he moved and stood on the giant head of the ink-scaled behemoth. Qianxuan, let's go to the primal core star area. Roar! The giant beast seemed extremely dissatisfied with Sun Luo calling it that. After all, it was a name given by Qinyu. How could an outsider call it that? Although it was dissatisfied with Sun Luo's title, the giant beast didn't disobey Sun Luo's order. It turned into a streak of light and dashed toward the primal core star area. After Sun Luo and the ink-scaled behemoth left, the periphery of the Zhenyuan star area was left with countless ruins, broken corpses, storage bags, broken Dharma treasures, and the white-browed boy, who looked worried. The white-browed boy's subordinates were all dead, and he himself was severely injured. He had also lost the heaven-piercing arrows that he had painstakingly refined, but he still managed to keep his life. He was still worried, but when he suddenly heard that Sun Luo wanted to go to the primal core star area, he was immediately shocked. The primal core star area was a superior star area, but it was extremely extraordinary. Although it wasn't an imperial star, there was a secret place called the Supreme Dan Sacred Region. The master of the Supreme Dan Sacred Region was a mysterious great emperor with a strange temperament. He didn't live in the imperial star, but kept a low profile and guarded the Supreme Dan Sacred Region. Few people in the world knew about this person. Only the old monsters of the ancient times had heard of him. This person was a 7-tribulation immortal emperor. He rarely fought and was called the Primal Core Great Emperor. He was one of the 16 emperors of the East Sky. Sun Luo is going to look for trouble with the Primal Core Old Man again? I wonder what the outcome of the battle between him and the Primal Core Old Man will be. Cough, cough, cough. The white-browed child had the intention to go to the primal core star area to take a look and fish in troubled waters. However, he was too heavily injured at the moment. Every time he spoke, he would cough out blood. It seemed like he couldn't get involved in the affairs of the primal core star area. Thus, he decided to go into seclusion first. Someone clean up the battlefield and bury the cultivators who died in battle. The white-browed child gave the battlefield a complicated look and ordered the vast galaxy. Countless subordinates immediately flew out from each of the cultivation planets to carry out the order. As for him, he quietly flew to the Zhenyuan star and decided to go into seclusion to heal his injuries. In the 9th star area, Ningfan was making fireworks while replaying the scenes of the battles between Sun Luo's emperors in his mind. It was a great opportunity for him to observe the battles between Sun Luo and the immortal emperors. It was a great benefit to Ningfan to increase his experience in fights of magical power. Ningfan traced the Tao essence of Sun Luo's star souls. Gradually he understood something. It hurts. The little demoness who had been lying quietly beside him suddenly let out a moan and opened her eyes slightly. The moment she opened her eyes and saw the unfamiliar environment of the 9th star area, she immediately put on an unprecedented vigilance. When she realized that Ningfan was also beside her, she lowered her vigilance and sat up slightly. Looking at the fireworks on the ground, she asked doubtfully, "Where are we? Husband, what are you doing?" "This is the 9th star area of Sun Luo. Many things happened while you were unconscious. I can tell you everything. This is the star area of Sun Luo Immortal King." All of a sudden, the little demoness's black eyes were filled with astonishment. After the initial shock, her face was filled with anger and hatred. Before Ningfan could explain everything in detail, she suddenly felt a sharp pain from the void poison. Her whole body went limp and she fell on Ningfan's knees. Her clothes slipped, revealing her snow-white shoulder. Ningfan immediately reached out his hand and touched her forehead. He felt that it was scalding hot and his face immediately turned gloomy. The void poison had acted up again. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.